think it's just pretty cool that like you have a son at that age now where like, you know, you and I knew each other at that moment in time when we were just starting to, you know, get into our interests and hobbies and then actually pursuing them in a way, you know, that was outside of the school curriculum. And it's just sort of nice to be seeing that, like, you know, you got a son that's age and you're seeing what interests he gravitates towards and getting to recognize a little bit of you and the differences that you guys have too. Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah. It's funny because I tried to get him to watch The Godfather with me, and I think he may have lasted 5 minutes because he thought it was really boring. But when I was his age, even younger, because the first time I saw a glimpse of The Godfather, that might have been like 7 or something, and I just thought it was the most boring thing in the world. Like I didn't understand why a bunch of grown men are like obsessed with this movie with some old guy talking, holding. It just didn't make any sense to me as a kid. Yeah. So when I explained it to my kid, and I had to beg him to watch it with me because I was like, "This is going to change your life," and he was like, I'm not interested. So he walked away. So then I told him, I tried to give him an incentive to watch The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the extended cut. And I said, if you can watch this movie with me, I'll get X, Y, and Z for you. Okay, cool. No problem. He had a fight to watch that movie. And he said, it's a good film, but never again. I was like, so I guess Two Towers out of the question. He's like, yeah, you can forget that. I was like, okay, fair enough.
Dang. So, it's like that. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So the tastes aren't all in the exact same areas in certain cases here, but like when I was his age, certain things didn't click with me at that time. So later on, revisiting it, I became more appreciative and then became a fan of the films. So I'm not saying that it's gonna happen to him, but I could see that being the case for him as well too, where him and I in so many ways were very much alike, which is cool, but I don't want him to be like a carbon copy of me, if that makes any sense.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like, you know, in what you were saying before too, like I think, you know, it took time for our own taste to develop, right? And what we choose to like. And I would say that the things that I was into at that time are probably not the things I would be watching with the same sort of perspective or eyes that I do today. You know, that goes for music, that goes for film. You know, I was going to ask, like, you know, like at 14 or 15, like what movies did appeal to you? Because I would say that, like, you know, probably most of the movies I was watching, I mean, I guess I still have like similar tastes, but, you know, I remember like watching a lot of like Adam Sandler and like that, like 90s SNL stuff. But for the most part, you know, you watch back some of those movies and particularly like Adam Sandler movies, and they don't hold up in the same way. Definitely not in 2022. No. You know?
For various reasons too, which is kind of funny to point out, I think, because it's funny. I got my son to watch Big Daddy, which I think is my favorite Adam Sandler movie he's ever done. And he's done other great movies too, don't get me wrong, but that one stuck like really hit it for me. So I got him to watch that movie, and I'm realizing, like, man, that we can't do those things now with kids in a film of this sort, where they're kind of pushed into that kind of provocative area in some ways. And not that I was saying that I was uncomfortable watching this movie with my kid, but I remember thinking, like, if this was my dad, I don't know if it would have worked out the same way too. I think there've been a lot of like restrictions. Okay, turn around, don't look over here. I just let my son watch the film. Not that it's grotesque by any means, but even now as a parent, I'm not as restrictive as I thought I was going to be when it came to what I let my son watch. Not to say that he's watching grotesque things, but I feel like because I was exposed to it at such a young age, in a lot of ways, like I wouldn't say it helped matured my thought process, but because I was exposed to it, I had questions about it. So in a lot of ways, I don't put it out there for him, but if he discovers it, I don't interfere because I want him to figure it out for himself. And then in time, if he doesn't bring it up, then, hey, I saw you were watching this movie. What did you think? And that's kind of where it all kind of began for me and him, because like myself, when I was kids, I'm sure it was like you too, whatever was popular at that time, you know, for him it was Power Rangers. So it was for me too. And he was obsessed with these things. So this obsession levels when it came to what he loved was the same for me as well too. So early on, I started noticing that what I was trying to do was stop certain things that I thought wasn't good But instead, I realized as the years have gone by, just let him figure it out for himself, and you'd be very surprised how quickly he can learn. So like with him saying Breaking Bad was a good show, and he told me why, it was so thoughtful, which was impressive about it. Which is like he wasn't critiquing it, but he was pointing out the finer details. And I was like, so you're saying the show's about this? Like, yeah, and it's about this guy who sells drugs, but he has cancer, but he's struggling. And I mean, this all as a kid, I wouldn't have done that very well, but because I was so I wasn't a fast learner, but he's a much he can absorb information much better than I can. So he comprehends things a little bit more better than myself. So it's interesting for me because basically the things that he was experiencing is what I wanted to experience is what I would have liked to experience as a kid without, the slowness that I have when it came to understanding stuff. So when I watch movies, I'm not sure if it was like for you, sometimes I didn't get things right away. I had to go back and watch it over and over and over again to really comprehend. But for me, sometimes the most simplest things too, which was hard for me to grasp what was really going on. And then once I watched it the 15th time, not saying that's the point where I got it, but once I got to that point, I was like, now it makes more sense for me. So when people ask me, why'd you like the movie? I was pointing out the little finer details, not like the action scene was great. No, it was, but did you see that part where he led up to that ledge and then the guy was talking to him? You saw he was distressed, and like those were the details I was pointing out. And most people were like, that's great, man, but wasn't it cool that he landed it without getting splattered to death? I was like, yeah, it was cool, but what about the events that led up to that? That was the most interesting part for me, because then you find out what his reasons were, what changed for him, and then the events that occurred after that. Like that to me was much more interesting. And that's what I started noticing with my son when he was pointing out Breaking Bad. Like, these are the things you have to look out for, but I can't tell you everything because otherwise you'll be spoiled and it's going to ruin that experience for you. And I think that's the reason why you will love the show. And he was 100% right. He was like on point when it came to that stuff. It's not always like this. I don't want to get the impression that every time he makes a recommendation was always the greatest thing in the world. It wasn't, but there were moments when he's on point. It's like this kid is much more observant than I was at 15. So it hits close to home in a lot of ways for me personally, as you can tell now. So
I wonder if, like, that I think about the same thing with my niece and nephew. They're my nephew's around the same age now, and I think they come up with their own set of questions about the world, and they have a completely different perspective than we did growing up. And we I think about that with the way that we viewed our parents' generation, and how they saw the world, and we were like, man, we're nothing like them. And then you find out, that they were just figuring it out themselves, and as we get older, we're still doing the same thing. Like, I definitely know that, 20 years later, I still feel like a kid. Like, I'm like, I don't know, I have anything figured out. My parents must have felt the same way, But here we are looking at like our future generation, and we're like, you guys are so much smarter than we were.
But
maybe that's just like part of it is like also like information is that much more accessible, I guess, in a way. At least for now, until they start banning more books and restricting more education in schools. I don't know.
That's the funny thing too, because I was actually talking with somebody, because I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts about this here, because I know we want to get into comic books here, but because when I was watching like, here's an example. I was watching a film. I'm sorry, I was talking to a group called Middle-Aged Queers, and the lead singer, Sean, was talking about how when he was a kid, he saw Ace Ventura, which he thought was one of the funniest movies he's ever seen, at the time. And then as the years have gone by, he said that now, the way things have changed for him, that he doesn't look at the film in the same light anymore, where he looked at the fact that there was a transgender character that was the villain. And a lot of times, characters of that sort, especially in the gay community, were more or less looked at as villains. And nowadays it's a little bit more, they're more fleshed out, they have more story, and a really good story to tell, I would say. But at the time, they were just kind of pigeonholed as one particular type of character. And in a lot of ways, that was kind of the public perception to a lot of people, or the transgenders, they may have that preconceived notion because of what they saw in the film, and that was the label they carry because of said films. So when he said that, I was like, I never looked at it that way, but I can see it now that you mention it to me. And I'm not going to say that I don't like the film because of it, but it definitely gave me a different perspective. When I look at the movie, I was like, yeah, I could see it now. It's still funny to me, but a lot has definitely changed from that perspective there that they had shared with me here.
Oh, well, hell yeah. I mean, like, you look at, I mean, talk about like, you know, that 90s era of comedy and film. Like there's a lot of things that were, you know, you sort of have to think about like what the who the joke is about, right?
Yeah.
You know, like and you know, as a person of color, like that was something that was you know, understood too, you know, with a movie like 16 Candles, where you're like, okay, who's the butt of the joke and what's a joke about? You
Yeah.
know, like is it a situational comedy or is it like something that is directed towards a certain marginalized group of people, you know? And yeah, I think there's you know, I know that that's something that we're asking ourselves about, you know, our own line of comedy today, you know, and whether or not some jokes are out of line,
Yeah.
some jokes are just not relevant anymore, and you know, I think there's a lot to be said about it because you know, I don't think we can sort of grow or progress as people unless we figure out what that is, what that entails,
Yeah.
you know, like unless we want to keep on making, you know, the same sort of butt jokes that we've been doing for, you know, the past
Yeah.
however long.
I think you know, like so we wanted to get into comics. There's actually something I'm really curious to ask from your perspective because so as for me as a kid growing up, I love action movies. Like I remember when before Jackie Chan made it big, you know, was more famous here in the US, like I was fully aware of who he was, you know, from
Yeah.
the tons of movies I saw, you know, renting his films at the video store, excuse me. And I was fully aware of what he was capable of pulling. Like I remember seeing Meals on Wheels as a kid and I was blown away
Yeah.
with that movie. I watch it now as a kid. I thought it was amazing. It still is amazing, but it was the fight sequences that were amazing. You know, the film
Right.
itself was just okay. But because I was aware of who he was and what he was able to do, and by the time I would say Rush Hour more or less put him on the map, if you will, on a worldwide scale, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, this guy's amazing. Well, he's been around for years, and you're now just catching up with him. And the people that brought him in were fans of him, and then you know they gave him an opportunity, and it worked out in his favor, thankfully. But you know I because I saw that as a kid and noticing that when Jackie Chan started doing Rush Hour 1 and 2, then there was another film of that sort, Shanghai Night and Shanghai Noon. Basically the
Oh
same
yes. Yeah.
formula.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong,
Right.
I thought the films were fine for what they were to a point, I would say, but it became like another, you know, regurgitated mess. I mean, a same stuff again. I was going to say crack because it wasn't, but same stuff again. And then I remember thinking, like, this is not what I wanted for Jackie Chan, because then I saw the Tuxedo in theaters, and I remember thinking, like, he basically became like a
A
tool in
shtick.
the system. And I
Yeah.
thought this is what I did not want to see, because when he was in control of his films, they were amazing. Who Am
Yeah.
I? You know, uh, um,
Police
Super
Story.
Cop, Police Story. Yeah, all those films were amazing. You know, story wise, maybe not the best, but action wise, the sets and the choreography were just mind blowing. And I remember thinking, imagine if Jackie Chan could do his style of fighting and then have people who can tell great stories, mix the two together. You can have one of the most amazing films ever made. And then you know, obviously became what it is. And then after a while, once superhero films started coming out and became more of like a popularized form of genre where people that grew up with this stuff now made it like cool. Then I remember thinking, like, I would love to see those type of films that I grew up as a kid, you know, all the Jet Li movies. Like, I want to see a movie like that, but in a superhero form. And I knew Shang-Chi was around. When I saw Shang-Chi, I was floored because everything that I hate, that what I despise that Marvel did to a point was action sequences. Because I always felt like their scenes were always too
Yeah.
cut, too short. They did all that nonsense. I wasn't a big fan of. Winter Soldier and I think Civil War did a pretty decent job, but they still had too many of those quick cuts, I would think. I think I meant to
Mm-hmm.
say. But when they had Shang-Chi involved, when they started bringing Shang-Chi together, the biggest concern that I had was that are they going to do the exact same nonsense and not do the film justice? Not because it has an action film featuring an Asian character, but because the people that are going to be involved in making this movie are trying to set the precedent about what can we do to make this film stand out above the rest. And I think it's certainly out of all the films that's currently happening right now in Phase 4, this film and probably Spider-Man Far From Home or No Way Home, excuse me, were the absolute two best that have come out in this particular.
I would agree with Shang-Chi. Despite, I think Marvel has a formula now, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a second. But I think the ending's always going to have some like CGI laden spectacle. But I do agree with you. Like, I think the people that they got involved in the project. I think everything from the directors down to the actors sort of knew, the kind of history that has been told with Asian characters and the kind of representation that they have in film. And I think there was an idea to preserve some of that sort of ideology to like set it apart from the rest of the Marvel films. And, especially if you're going to present a movie about a superhero who has these martial arts abilities, you can't cheapen them up with too much like CGI, even though like, some scenes, like including the bus scene, it's like they're shooting in a studio in a green setting with green room setting.
Yeah.
But like the choreography is there, the stunt work is there, the wire work is there, and it has a lot of the ballet-like structure that a lot of the kung fu and action films that were coming out of Hong Kong and China at that time had. And that's the thing is like, I know that there's a bunch of video analytics and people that talk about like, especially like that early aughts, like Bourne era, like quick editing, quick cutting to sort of create the frenetic energy of a fight versus actually being able to like set the camera back, which I felt like was like the late 80s, early 90s Hong Kong style of filming, where let's pull the camera back and really see people do the action, so that you could see the full choreography and there was a rhythm and a meter to the fighting. And, I think Shang-Chi did that. The two big fight sequences, the bus scene and the scene in the fight warehouse, or whatever, where they're on the stairs. I'm like, I get that you have to use CGI for some of these scenes, but like also at the same time, you didn't let that overpower the intensity and the situation, like the need to really sort of fight in these situations.
Yeah.
And I think that was cool.
I'm not sure if you, because I'm curious about how you feel with comic books movie now becoming like the biggest changes that certainly changed the landscape for cinema. Because I mean, if you remember, like, especially, I mean, obviously we weren't alive at that time, but when you look at a movie like, for example, like Superman, the movie, when it first came out, like that movie kind of set the standard. Like, you can take these movies and make them serious and make them really good. I mean, the film now, I don't think holds up that well in terms of like the technical aspects of it, but the story I think was pretty good. But then you watch a movie like, you have one good film, and then you start to notice a trend when it comes to, well, this one we did really well, and then they changed the formula. Like, Superman 2, Donner was directing the film and got like 75% of it almost completed, and then he got fired, and then they ended up bringing someone else in. It became more or less a comedy movie, and then the third one flat out was just a comedy. Fourth one was,
wasn't the director that came in the guy that did the Beatles movies? He was like known for slapstick.
Yeah, he was a comedic director. He was Richard Lester, I think is his name, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a comedic director. So they brought him in. I forgot for what reason, because I didn't really look into it, to be honest. But and then they noticed that, well, that film did very well. Let's continue that same formula. And then we have the third Superman film bringing Richard Pryor in. The fourth one, like I said, it is what it is. But then you have like a movie like, for example, like Batman, which came out in '89, and that movie like completely changed everything. Like, basically brought people to become more aware of like, you can make this movie very, very serious and make it very, very good. And then they did Batman Returns, which I don't know if it's the most popular thing to say, but I actually like that film better than the first one. I thought that was a much better movie. Yeah, I thought that was a better film. And then Batman Forever came out, and it became too, not every film's commercialized, but this movie became too commercialized. And then Batman and Robin was just purely a 2-hour commercial for the toys. Yeah. So you notice, like, for example, like you have all these trends when it comes to what really works, and for whatever reason, the people behind the scenes dilute that formula and make it something that's completely different from what we first got. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because with the Marvel movies, on the other hand, they have a formula that works, and they're actually consistent all across the board with their films when it comes to origin stories, bringing in the right people to tell the stories, offering a unique perspective with the directors bringing something to the film that wasn't done before in the previous work, and then allowing the actors to kind of more or less, to fine tune the character that would best bring out the best, the best performance for the character. Chris Evans is a great example. Chris Hemsworth is a huge example where the first two Thor movies, he was way too serious. Not that he was bad in it, but then Ragnarok and then recently Love and Thunder, he's completely changed from this goofball in a lot of ways, which I don't remember from the comics. I've only read a few Thor comics, but I don't remember him being that goofy, if I recall correctly. So there's room for them to expand so long as it fits for the purpose of the story and makes the product good in that respect. So I feel like Marvel has set the standard about how they go about in telling their stories. Sometimes it works very well, sometimes mediocre, sometimes is it's not terrible, but it's either mediocre or above, and that's very hard to do for a lengthy period of time.
Well, I think there's something to be said about Kevin Feige handling, the cinematic universe of the MCU, being really faithful to and loyal to its fan base. And also loyal to the people that have built up, these characters and really sort of really wanting to protect those, and like I agree with you. I think, coming into Phase 4, you're starting to see a lot of, a little bit too much catering to fan fiction or fan based theories or fan wants and needs, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You could just sort of see now that there was a little bit more of a spontaneity and an uncertainty when they were doing Iron Man per se, and not really knowing whether or not like a continuity universe can be established. And you fast forward like 12, 13 years now, and it's like now they know they got people hooked. They are the biggest money makers in dominating box office now. And I think what we're sort of seeing is whether or not that has lasting power. I think Phase 4 is going to be a big test of it. They're now like, what my worry is sort of the argument whether over like curating something versus like content. And I'm starting to see that it could possibly go into like just so much content type of territory. You're looking at all these releases in the last couple of years. And you would think that like all these projects being delayed by COVID, that like they're just like, all right, we need to get stuff out. But you would think that like that downtime with COVID, they could like really fine tune some of these projects. But to be honest with you, like most of them I've had my concerns about, and I sort of leave the movies or leave the shows and sort of feeling like a little underwhelmed.
Do you think you feel like it's kind of like at a lull right now where we've seen a lot of this spectacle, and then we're at a point where we kind of become desensitized to that, where we think that, well, we've seen this before, so it's nothing new to offer in that respect? Because I think, like, for example, like I saw Thor Love and Thunder this past week, and I liked the movie. I thought Ragnarok was a much better film. Not that Thor Love and Thunder was not any good. It was a good film, but in comparison to like what Ragnarok offered, you have to understand Ragnarok came off of two Thor films that I just thought were the first one. A lot of people like that film. I just thought it was okay. I didn't think it was great. The second one was barely okay for me personally in terms of like the story that they were going with here. It just wasn't up to par in my opinion. Well designed film. I'm not saying that it isn't, but it's very well designed. But when you're coming off of those two films and you make a banger in Ragnarok, of course people are going to hold in such high regard because you're coming off two films that some really like and some didn't really like into as far as the sequels are concerned. And then you can only go so high, and if you go high, it's got to be expected to stay up there. And Love and Thunder kept that same momentum, but I felt like there was a lot that was missing with that movie where there was more to the story and we were only told a bit of it. And because of that, I think that's where the film kind of faltered in, because I'm not sure if they felt like they were overstuffing the ideas that they wanted, and then they realized we can't put all this stuff in one movie. We got to take a little bit of it out. So I think they kind of like bit off more than they can chew. And I think I'm starting to notice that with a lot of the films that Marvel's coming out here with lately, where it's like, what else can we do now? Because we've already done this stuff here. What else can we start adding here? So I feel like I'm coming to a point right now where like, well, enough is enough for right now. So maybe start serving smaller dishes rather than the full buffet. It's kind of how I look at
it. I started jokingly looking at it like this. I'm like, okay, with Ragnarok, they were in the middle of the Infinity Saga still, right? And they're telling the greater, larger story, and they figured out that like through phase 1 and phase 2, that there can be an interconnected universe, and there's going to be an audience established for it. So like, even though they left us little like trails of Thanos, it really didn't really become a clear picture until like phase 3, right?
Yeah.
And then phase 3, it started becoming a little bit abundantly clear where everything was heading.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like after such a big, momentous, almost like 10-year arc, having to sort of separate out all the characters again to only like reemerge them later on at some point, they have to each go on to their individual solo stories and like find their characters through that. And so I respect that. But yeah, there is something to be said about, the reality that like most of these stars that have already been through the Infinity Saga, their contract's going to end at some point, and so like they're going to try to juice as much out of their characters in a short amount of time, knowing that there might not be an opportunity to put them in another movie, or like if they are, it's going to be, a cameo, or they have to pass down the torch to a new hero or some sort,
I can see that.
I guess that's the limitation of the cinematic universe with that. But
you were going to say?
I was going to say that shouldn't detract from the storytelling aspect of it. But I do feel like right now it just seems like there's a sort of mass machine that's sort of producing these films out. And I don't know if you're one that gets bothered by it, but I get bothered by it. And I just feel like phase 4, like even between the TV projects and the film projects, sometimes I'm looking at the CGI, I'm like, how fast did you guys rush this out? Yeah. Like this doesn't even look like there's a set to be built.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you're talking about the TV shows. So I've only seen in its entirety 2 shows. WandaVision, which I saw like way after the fact because my son kept recommending, you got to watch the show, you will like the show. I was like, all right, fine, I'll get it. So I watched one episode and then eventually came back and I saw the entire series, and I was like, this is actually very, very good with the way they wrote the story, because clearly I think they had more time in formulating that storyline. But then I saw Moon Knight, which I was really excited about because I was very familiar with who the character was. I never really read a lot of his comics, and to be honest, I don't remember which ones I read because it was such a long time ago. But but I was really intrigued with that character because I thought, you have Batman right there. This could be your Batman. I mean, it can be a very complicated Batman, but it's Batman for the MCU. I was so underwhelmed with that show. I mean, not to say that Oscar Isaac wasn't good, and Ethan Hawke is a great actor, but I didn't really care for his character that much. And then when you get to the ending, like almost every Marvel show, from what I understand, it's all rushed. And there's really nothing for me to anticipate following that here, because it's basically tacking on to more things to be expecting with this character. But I don't really care, to be completely honest. I mean, the thing is, you have great quality people who are making them shows when you can tell they worked really hard on it. But I think you said it yourself, they oversaturate some things, and I'm starting to feel just a little bit worn out because there's nothing that I can really gravitate to that I can think that this is really thought out. So like The Boys, for example, that is by far, I think, one of the greatest TV shows ever written. Like I love that show, but there's not that convoluted storylines. Not to say Marvel is convoluted, but it is in a way. But you have a focus with various characters in that universe, if you will, and you don't have to worry about adding on to this other crap. Now they're doing a spin-off show, which is more or less connected with the main show. I'm curious to see how that will turn out.
Yeah.
But I think Marvel has got way too many eggs in their basket, and I'm not saying that what they're doing is not a good idea. It's fine as long as it works, as long as it's good. It should be fine. But I think too many ideas and not enough cooks to fine tune and really make it as good as it can actually be. Because I think they're missing a lot of beats on that. Kind of going long-winded here, but I think you understand with what I'm referring to, because it sounds like to me you're kind of seeing the same ways as I'm looking at it myself too. But but do you feel that with the way Marvel's doing it, that other studios should take notice about how just because it works for Marvel, we're not going to do the same thing too? Because if when Marvel started to get that momentum for them in the beginning, everyone started doing it. Universal was doing that with their monster characters, starting with the Mummy, and it failed miserably. DC basically made Man of Steel, and they thought, let's make a universe film in one movie so that we can make spin-off films off that one film, being BVS. And then Sony did the exact same thing too with Amazing Spider-Man 2. And then, now they're doing it, I think, again with this current Spider-Man universe thing that they have going on right now.
And they're bombing. They're bombing.
I think they're doing terrible. I think the Venom films are okay. I don't love them, but I enjoy them for what they are.
But that's the thing, though. Like, I think, like to conceive like an interconnected universe, like MCU was able to do it. And like they made, there was compelling stories, there was compelling characters that actually pulled through. Yeah. And not to say that there wasn't duds in the bunch. Like I was the same, that it was like Thor, The Dark World, could care less.
Yeah.
Incredible Hulk movies. I wish that they had some standalones with Mark Ruffalo, but like ultimately, like there's studio disputes over his character and stuff like that it wasn't able to pan out.
Yeah.
I would like to think that like MCU's handling of it, as long as Kevin Feige is there's going to be something that like will do the characters or the movies justice. My worry is that they just don't have there's such a juggernaut now that there's so many people in the pot now that like there's not the cohesive vision to be able to bring all these characters to light. Their whole entire thing about doing like the Disney Plus series was to like take the smaller unknown characters and really give them time and room to breathe, so that we can be slowly introduced to these characters. But what I'm seeing is like sort of these also very rushed, half out shows that like ultimately fall flat. Like there's villain issues, there's effects issues, there's sort of character plot holes, and then like they sort of like have these like weird sort of loose ties to each other, like that they give in your surprise credit scenes, that I'm just like, can you just tell a good story? And I think my argument for it is the Netflix produced Marvel movies or Marvel shows. Like I think that there was something compelling really about Daredevil. I think all 3 seasons were pretty pitch perfect. I think Jessica Jones was the same way, and I actually really like Luke Cage too. Like I think there was
the second season though. So was the second season any good for Luke Cage?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I think first season was a lot stronger, but like I still like the character of Luke Cage, and I think there was a focus on telling smaller stories that didn't require like the grander universe. And I think by doing so, they actually grounded the heroes in some semblance of reality that we could understand. And that's my fear is like, as they've gone further into the universe and now into this multiverse, it's almost way too fantastical, that like there's not enough of a grounding there. Like I think, especially bringing in something like the mutants and X-Men into the MCU, where I'm like, part of the big conflicts of X-Men, like that I love, is the fact that like humans and like civilians were always in fear of the mutants, you know, and that it was very much a commentary on, you know, the racial and prejudice injustices that were happening at that time, you know. And I think they would be missing a valuable opportunity to be doing that storytelling right now in our current times, you know, if they didn't address that, you know, through their characters.
Yeah.
And I think my worry is that they're going to just sort of build on the universe, build on these characters that they've had for so long, and just sort of draw them in. And you sort of forget that like there's a whole entire universe out there, and then there's a whole entire group of people that are not involved with these characters that don't see it the same way. They don't see it as a superheroes. They don't see them as people that are worthy of being put to this like higher level of light, you know.
Yeah, I can see that. But you know, because we're talking about the idea of just having to have Marvel and the people behind the scenes to just focus on the characters and get their story, not worry about adding on this, you know, Easter egg. I wouldn't say nuts, but oversaturation. You know what I'm starting to like more about these recent DC films that are coming out, with the exception of the one that's going on in the current universe, if you will. But if you look at movies like the Batman that just came out, and then the Joker, or just Joker, I thought those movies worked so well. I mean, yes, they are great movies, but when I have time to think about it after the fact, what I started to realize, because I was so used to the idea that everything's got to be connected, right, for the last 10 plus years, when I walked away from the movie, it dawned on me that, oh, there's no Easter eggs. I mean, there is, but it's not the Easter eggs you think. You know, like there's another character out there. Where, you know, I mean, it was kind of like, if it was extremely subtle, but not the focus. And when I walked away from the Joker, seeing the film for the first time, I was blown away that, I mean, because you can take that character and not make it the Joker. And could the film have done as well? Probably not. But you take a different perspective, the character of having him being this troubled individual, and make a very good story with a very good actor. And then you have the Batman, which is kind of more or less, I would say, that in the same vein too, where he is extremely aggressive, but then as the character goes through the story along the way, he figures out, I don't need to be as aggressive anymore. I mean, I still have to stop these guys, but I don't have to do it the way that I did it. And you find that character arc where he starts to realize that, because you have the time to develop that with this the story. And I thought that was brilliant when it came to that. And I thought DC, or at least in this case WB, they should just do that and not worry about all this other stuff that they're doing, because that's where they were the strongest, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And you know, not to say that Marvel does it better, because I think they do it very well. But I'm starting, you know, just like how you said, and I was also talking to two other guys here, Matt and Mike from Top Back Podcast. They had the exact same sentiments too, where it's like we're expecting the next thing to lead to the next thing, which that's going to be doing the exact same. Expect the next thing to lead to the next thing, rather than here's the story. This is who you should focus on, and don't worry about everything else outside of that. That to me, I think.
Do you remember when Scorsese got like flagged for saying that Marvel films were not
like theme parks,
cinema or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like I sort of had to laugh at that, because like it's like, I know people gave him shit for it, but like I think he did have a point that he was trying to make. And I'm not saying that Marvel movies aren't cinema. I rush to the theater every time a Marvel movie comes, because I fucking hate spoilers. And I know that, and they all know that. Everyone everyone at MCU, like Marvel Studios, knows this. And so like they fucking do it, because that's how they get people into the theaters, you know? So like the formula works.
Yes.
But there is something to be said about like a movie like, I thought the Batman was one of the stronger superheroes movies that I've seen in years. Joker, same way. I wouldn't say that they were necessarily my favorite superhero movies, because I don't watch them as that. They were much more character pieces or character studies, and I think that's what fascinated me, and that became really exciting to see on screen. You know, and I think what I'm sort of feeling is like I would like to see more sort of original visions or original ideas and projects, especially since we are oversaturated with like reboots, rehashes, sequels of everything. There's, you know, if you're gonna take an idea like the Batman or Joker or something like that, yeah, put a new spin to it. You know, you know, dare I say it, I would go like even go as zany as you want if you want. You know, you could like I would kill to see what Taika Waititi would want to do with like a Batman or Joker, you know, universe. It would probably be terrible, but I would still be like, you know what, like, you know, let's just try it, you know. And in that regard, like, you know, I feel like right now we're seeing that like there's a whole entire movie engine that works and knows a formula that is going to make it a big financial success, you know, and that they're going to play into that. And my worry is that much like the Star Wars universe or anything like that, they're going to see the pit. They're going to see the pitfalls where suddenly they're like, yo, we put too much faith in doing this and now it's actually not working, you know. And then you have some like John Favreau is going to have to save the day again, you know. Like John Favreau is going to come back and do like, you know, the X-Men movie and suddenly it's going to reignite the MCU franchise, you know, or like, or, you know, he's going to do another Mandalorian that's going to kick everyone's ass and Star Wars is going to like reboot over again too. You know?
To you, what are, not in any particular order, but what would be like the top, let's say, I don't know, top 5 for you offhand that you can think of right now as far as superhero film or comic book films are concerned that you can hold in high regard and think this is a great, I mean, yes, it is a great comic book film, but look at it as this is a great movie that just happens to be a comic book film. Like what would be like the top 5 for you? And again, it's not in any order if you don't have any, but one that would stick out as that you as your go-to to point out why these are great films.
I mean, I would be a sucker if I didn't say that the original Superman with Christopher Reeve wasn't on there, because I remember being like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid, like in my diapers with the fucking Superman cape, like running around. And I think that was like the first to capture my imagination. Obviously, I think they've done better with everything else out for that. But there was something genuine about, I think, the Richard Donner original Superman. It didn't all work, but it did capture the imagination of a kid that like carried on for years, you know. And to this day, it's still like seeing a movie on screen makes me like cry my eyes out. I think the original Iron Man was brilliant. You know, you take a character like Iron Man that wasn't the most popular of the MCU. You start off with him, and you get a great A-list actor like Robert Downey Jr. to play him. And suddenly you have something that really, really sells and works. And he really sort of carried that franchise for the time that he was there, you know? And Dark Knight, I'm definitely put up there. You know, you talk about a movie that shows its influences. It didn't shy away from, you know, paying homage to like Michael Mann and French Connection. And like all these like great crime thrillers, and yet here it presents this beautiful story and very epic. And you know, I you know, people talk about that trilogy, and really honestly, I'm like, there was flaws about the first one. There's flaws about the third one, you know, that or like pretty big ones that I was like, these don't hold the same caliber that I think Dark Knight does.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think Dark Knight stands alone, like in a while. In terms of other superhero movies, off the top of my head, I mean, I guess I would have to put Thor Ragnarok in there because, you know, much like you said, like I didn't think of Thor as a character that was really like had multi-dimensionals. You know, you sort of always held him at a godlike kind of like stature. But I think
I know what you're saying.
But like at the same time, you know, like I think, you know, Well, actually recommend, like, say that the first Avengers blew me away, because that's the first time we actually saw multiple heroes in smaller and in their own individual movies come together and work as like an ensemble piece.
Yeah.
And
I agree with you on that too. Yeah, it's a good one.
Because that fight against Loki in New York City is awesome. Yeah, pound for pound, what you like, you get a little bit of like, that was probably like one of the last movies where I actually felt like the humans were in danger. The people outside of the superhero like world were actually in danger, and got to see like be part of the action.
Interesting. So those are your top 4, top 5 for your that come to mind right now.
Right now. Okay. I'm probably missing a few. But
it's funny because I actually thought you were going to go more like the obscure ones, where, like, for example, like for me, not like the film that really set it off for me about me being a film lover, believe it or not, was the Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, when it came out in 1990. Like, that's the first one I saw in theaters.
Oh yeah, the original.
Yeah. So because at the time I didn't know it was based on a comic book. I learned it after the fact, but having read the comic book and then seeing the films and seeing the cartoon shows, because that was my favorite show growing up as a kid, that movie, in my opinion, was a perfect blend of all those things that I love about the film, especially when I learned after the fact that it's based on the original source material. It kept pretty true to it for the most part. Reading that and then watching the film again, and then growing up with the cartoons, where they did a perfect blend of all those things, and it was beautiful. And even though they had limitations with that time with the technology, with all the animatronics and the faces and everything for the
I like the animatronics. I think they were great too. I think it looks great.
But and the thing is that even though it was very limited at the time, they were so smart in shooting it in the dark, because they knew that certain things didn't move as well. Not to say it was always perfect, but even when you couldn't tell, you really couldn't tell. And the way they shot the film worked in its favor in keeping that dark overtone to it, which pissed off a lot of parents, which I don't understand why, because the movie was so successful when they did the second one. Not to say that I hate them, because I still enjoy it for what it is, but it's definitely a drop in terms of like the quality we got in the first film, where they were catering to the parents to make an actual Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film from the cartoon, and it didn't work out as well, and they paid the price for that. But what I'm trying to say is that with that movie, I thought that's a perfect blend of like all the things that the kids and comic book fans loved about the IP. I think that's the example. Like, that's how you do it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
The other film that comes to mind for me is possibly one of the greatest comic book films I've ever seen, because I have read the comic books for this character in Judge Dredd, not the Stallone one, which I still think is a fun movie, not a great film, but Dredd. Having read the comic books beforehand and reading and watching the film, I was blown away, like how well written, how well directed, how faithful they were to the character. And although it's pretty much an original story, more or less, but the essence of the character was very much from what we read in the comic books.
That came after the Stallone version?
This one came out in 2012, and the Stallone came out in 95. So the 2012 was meant to be the reboot, if you will. And it's a beautiful movie. Like, it's a very well done film. Have you ever seen the movie, by the way?
No, I haven't seen that one. I've seen the Stallone version.
You should watch Dredd. That's one of the greatest. I mean, for the sake of the conversation, one of the greatest comic book films I've ever seen in my life. I think that's a very well done film. And the things that they changed for the movie, because when you see in the Judge Dredd film, how he looks in the movie is exactly how he looks in the comic books. Like, he has that muscular frame and the whole, stuff that he has on him. In the 2012 one, Carl Urban plays him, and obviously he's not this massive individual. So how do you translate that to make it realistic and still make it believable? Well, he has a padded armor gear that is required for the police to wear in this movie, and it works very well. So it's not distracting, and it's definitely not trying to overcompensate. And he never removes his helmet at all, which is the beautiful thing about the film, because that's one thing that that Stallone would never allow, especially given his star power at that time. And he was a perfect guy to play the part too, considering his acting range. But Carl Urban, I think, did a really good job with what he did with that character, and understanding that this character isn't just about making a spectacle, but trying to find the reasons why he is so adamant about following the law. And then when he comes to question about these values that he has, and then makes an exception to the rule, the exception to the rule he makes is a valid one where you don't question his motivation anymore because you understand why he made that decision at the end of the film, where, okay, he's not the complete hard ass that, well, he is, but he has a little humanity in him where he's very compassionate, understanding within reason. But it took a while to get to that point. So when you see that film, I hope you do like it, but I think you understand what I'm referring to about that, especially when you get to the end. So that film comes to mind. And I don't give a fuck what people say. I love this movie. I think Man of Steel is possibly one of the most underrated superhero films of all time. I think that movie is a masterpiece. I love that film because the complications of Clark Kent or Superman getting his powers and being just thrust into this whirlwind of like invasion from his own people and having to defend people that aren't really his people, but he considers them because that's his home. And now he's got to fight the very same people that he does come from and is conflicted. And now he's got to like defend the world. And I mean, there's so much about the story I can point out here that I absolutely love. Yeah. I think the action sequences are phenomenal. Some people think it's a little too much. I think it's perfectly fine. I enjoyed that amount of violence in that respect. And what else comes to mind too?
I think I have a Zack Snyder problem.
Why do you have a problem? Do you have a problem with that movie in particular, or just overall?
No. Man of Steel, it was a movie that I wanted to like more, but I think the styling that Zack Snyder chooses as a director, I would say like 9 times out of 10, almost bother me to an extent. Like they're shot beautifully.
Yeah.
If it was a music video, you know, like every frame.
Well, he did come from a music video background too, so it definitely translates.
Every frame looks good. It's just I don't see them as compelling. Like I don't see them translating into. I don't think it serves the story as much as I think he wants it to.
I can see that argument, but I don't necessarily agree with that. Maybe because again, I love the spectacle so long as it has substance. For me, that movie has a lot of spectacle, but it has great substance behind it, at least from my perspective. But a lot of people will point out that it's just a disaster porn. I understand that perception. I understand that critique, but I don't necessarily see it that way. Like I can look at a lot of Michael Bay films, and not all of them are like this here, but there's quite a few, especially the Transformers. That is pure disaster porn. Like that movie is just such a mess. Most of those films are such a mess for me that don't really care. So I can consider that being disaster porn. But Man of Steel, on the other hand, it's the furthest from that because I felt like the consequences, at least at that time, at least for that moment, had some levity behind it. So I walked away with something from that film that made me realize that you can tell those type of stories in this massive spectacle and still have great character motivation behind that. And I thought that movie did that very, very well, at least from my perspective. So, but the critiques, I get it, but honestly, I don't really care because I still think the film holds up very well. And the fact that, we haven't gotten a sequel, which I understand for business purposes, why, some people will disagree with me, but I think Henry Cavill is by far the best Superman we've had, and he has everything that I wanted in a Superman. He was the pinnacle for me in that respect. Some people don't think so, but I could care less.
He is like a perfect casting for it. I think there might be possibility that Superman might not be. He was one of my favorite heroes growing up. But I think maybe the prevalence in having a Superman story right now as a primary hero might not be as resonating as it was, say, post World War II, or during that era. I think with a show that's making commentary based on, like, The Boys is a good prime example of that. Which is to be said, maybe that's part of what we're experiencing now with MCU and sort of where the future of comic movies and stories go. Like, I think there's got to be a little bit of that human element to it, where it's like, even though they're superheroes, they all have like these very grounding truths that we all relate to. And I think Superman sort of became a little bit detached for a lot of us, because we're like, you're already godlike, you know. And that's not to say this is really mainly just a tangent right now. This is mainly just sort of contemplating why we don't have a Man of Steel 2 yet, or why they haven't tried to resurrect another movie of that, you know. I think they tried to do that with Superman Returns, and I remember going to the theaters being super excited for Superman Returns.
It was boring, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing, you know, like you watch it and you're like, well, what's the motivation for this villain, you know? Like, what is Lex really trying to do? Yeah, like what is he really trying to do right now?
Yeah,
that's like needs somebody to stop him on this massive global scale. But I wouldn't mind watching Man of Steel over again. I definitely think out of the Zack Snyder films that he did for DC Universe, that's definitely the strongest one. I didn't care for the extended director's cut of Justice League.
You saw it and you didn't like it?
I saw it. I saw all 4 hours. It took me like over a 3-day period. But
I thought it was a great movie. I actually liked that film a lot.
Was it a vast improvement over like Joss Whedon's cut? For sure. Yeah. But like, once again, I think I have a problem with the Zack Snyder like way of storytelling, where it's like 6 hours of slow motion, you know, and gravitas for like no apparent reason besides the fact that it just looks beautiful. Which I'm like, I could do that, but like, you know, like I feel like I reserved that for like Terrence Malick films, you know, like okay. give me 3 hours of Tree of Life, and like okay, I see it unfolding slowly, and it's supposed to be told on the gradual story scale.
Did you like that movie, by the way, Tree of Life?
I did.
Okay.
That's the thing. Like, I think like when there's intent, I can totally jive with it. For me, it felt out of place. Like I didn't go into Justice League with an idea for an art film, you know, or art house movie. And maybe I should, but maybe I also am like biased that like I'm like, Zach, maybe you're not the art house director that I think you are, you know?
I don't know. I think, you know, like it's I get I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that, because not to say that, you know, you're saying that he's not an art director is not valid. I do understand what you're referring to here, but I think from my perspective is that, as I said before, when I looked at Man of Steel, like the films that I've always wanted to see in superhero movies are spectacle with substance, and I think he brings that with his movie. Now, I will be honest though, that BVS, especially the extended cut, was a much better film, but it became too much of a setup, which is what I think the film's biggest problem was. Is let's try to set everything up, but let's set it up methodically, so that way once we let loose, we can do, you know, however we want with the respective narrative and this whole universe that we're building here. But I think that was one of the biggest problems with that film. But when you look at Justice League, you've already got to that point. You don't have to worry about all the other things that led up to that, because the story in that film I thought was so good that you had the time to develop certain story beats that clearly the 2017 version did not have, for obvious reasons. But I think that's where Zack Snyder shows his strength, where you can do the spectacle and do character and make a great story out of it. And I really think in that film, he showcases all those three strengths, where he really shows the beauty of what I think he could bring to those films. But for whatever reason, I think like I'm actually kind of surprised that a lot more people don't like that, because I thought that's what people would want. So when you get like a Marvel movie, which has great characters, but it's digestible, you know, here's a snack, guys, and then now here's the main course, and there you go. And people are like, that was amazing. But if you start bringing out a dish, like, well, here's this, but you got to add a little bit of this here, because if you do this, it'll add more flavor to it. Like, you have to take the time with it. I think some people get kind of bored with it. And I think that's what was the problem with a lot of his movies, especially when you came to BVS, Justice League, the extended cut, and then, of course, Man of Steel. I think those three films have the biggest consistent problem with a lot of people is just, it takes too long and I don't care. And I think they're doing a disservice in that respect by not really paying attention to those finer details, because if you look at it, it's a very well directed, very well written movie. And you can clearly see the example when you look at the 2017 version that Whedon brought to it, and it became a Marvel film. And what Marvel did so well is they set the standard that works well for them. And when you try to copy that with another studio, it becomes a carbon copy of what we've seen before. But if you allow someone else to do their own vision to it, I think Zack Snyder had something really, really good going on for it to get to that major final payoff, which is what he was trying to accomplish here. But unfortunately, it never came to fruition for obvious reasons now. So, I think that's you have something really good, but people get too scared. And that's what happened with these movies. They were too scared because they realized that it's not going to work. And we thought it was going to work because they believed in the story. That's what I believe. I really think that they thought it was so good that when the public got to it, they panicked and they just started pulling the plug. And now, now we got this convoluted mess that they're trying to put back together.
I'm sure it was also like equal that and timing too, right? Like I know that there was personal crises and Zach's that he had to abandon the project, but like also at the same time, like Marvel's running with a great success of films that like people wanted at that point, which was, they didn't want the crazy drama. They wanted to have something that was a little bit more easy to digest and also a little bit more colorful in the palette, like just from a aesthetic kind of view. And I get that Zach has that styling for a reason. And, I don't think there's like, I personally don't enjoy it, but I know that a lot of people do. And like a lot of comic book fans are a fan of what he does because he does it so well. I think he was true to the intent that he wanted for his movies and for the people that love the Superman, like Justice League lore, actually would gravitate to, which is why, we eventually got the Snyder Cut. I think, for me, like, I think I like style has to have, and I know this is probably our difference in opinions on these movies, but like, I think the style needs to have substance of why. And I'll put my own sort of idea of this should have been on my top 5 because I saw this movie in theater like 5 or 6 times. But the first Amazing Spider-Man by Sam Raimi felt like a comic book movie to me.
Yeah, that's true.
I felt like I was reading every single frame of a comics, book, watching his film from the Dutch angles, from the way he shot it to even though they took liberties on his webbing or whatever being organic in the film or whatever, I think that was the first time I like sat in theaters and watched a Spider-Man movie and been like, oh shit, this feels like reading a comic, like how I wanted my superhero, my Spider-Man to feel in a movie, and I remember people knocked on Willem Dafoe's mask or whatever when it first came out too. But the thing is, like, despite everything, that movie still holds up for me. Like I feel like I think that was the closest I got to like Spider-Man movie. And I love the Tom Holland ones. I think Marvel does a cool thing, but they were trying to tell a different story. They were trying to integrate them into a different whole entire thing. But I think the first Amazing Spider-Man was like the closest.
It's just Spider-Man though, for that, because Amazing Spider-Man is with Garfield.
Oh shit. That's right.
That was So Spider-Man.
So I think that was the closest.
That
was the closest that we got to like I think like a proper origin and closest to a comic book feel and vibe. That I've seen on screen.
For you, what's one comic book movie out there that probably most people don't gravitate to that you think is really, really good? And you feel like needs to get more attention because whatever you see in that film, you think holds up better or just as well as some of the more mainstream comic book films out there that most people tend to gravitate to, that you think in a lot of ways that movie could be superior in certain areas when it comes to character, storytelling, whatever the case may be? What's
that's tough because you got me on the spot, and then like you mentioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I totally forgot that was, and that was that like you talked about the darkness in that movie, and I was like, yeah, that felt like 1980s gritty New York,
Yeah,
like that was cool.
yeah,
Even like effects of like smoke coming out of the sewer drains is like
yeah,
something that visually stuck with me like through that
yeah.
time. But that's a tough question. I'm gonna say that like one of the movies that stuck with me that I think deserves more credit for how movies came, like the future of superhero films and the success of superhero films, was probably Blade.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think people underestimated how cool and dark and like visually compelling that movie is.
Yeah.
I mean, to this day, the bloodbath and the meat locker scene is
one of the greatest.
What a way to start out
ever.
a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Kick-ass soundtrack. Blade comes in and just fucks everything up, and you're just like, and who's his
Whistler?
man, who's Whistler?
Oh, Chris Christopherson.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so sick. But I feel like that set a certain kind of style, that was pre-Matrix, like sort of goth, like sort of cyberpunk goth kind of vibes going on.
It kind of a little bit of a Blade vibe to it too, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was cool, and it established like a very cool kind of, like you could create a universe and still have it be grounded in some kind of reality, and not have to take, and like this says a lot because the sequels are not as good. Some people say Blade 2 was better, but I'm like, Blade 1 really set the precedence,
Yeah.
And like, I mean, like the visual effects, I'm sure they're a little bit dated, but it still looked cool for its time.
Yeah.
It didn't distract from the storytelling. I think Wesley Snipes just played it exactly how he should have, And I'm a little concerned of, like how PG Marvel is going to take it.
I don't know. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say hesitant, but I'm leaning more towards the optimistic side of it with the portrayal of this character, because what we got in the movies was not how he was in the comic books, which I think a lot of people don't realize, that what we saw in the Blade films with Wesley Snipes, he wasn't really liked in the comic books. And he kind of pretty much made the character, to everyone who was not aware of him, they think of him like that because Wesley Snipes was that good, and when it came to his performance, and he was phenomenal, I think. But yeah, Marvel, I think lately when it comes to these pretty well established characters that we all know and love, in this case like Blade, I was really concerned. I was like, I don't know, man. They can't. This is one character they cannot mess up at all. I mean, they shouldn't mess up on any of the characters, but if there's one that comes to mind right now, it's that guy. But we'll see. I'm sure Mahershala has a lot to say in the matter, considering his prestige, if you will. So I'm pretty sure he will pretty much be very, very opinion about what should be done with the character. But here's a movie that I'm wondering what you think of it here, because I don't think a lot of people realize this is a comic book film, and if they do, if they don't, it's probably because they think of it as because of the cartoon show. But there's one movie that I think is truly, truly underrated when it comes to the comic book genre, and that's the movie Speed Racer. I don't know if you ever knew it was based on the manga. I'm sure you may be aware of it, right? I don't know if you've seen the film, and if you have, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts, because that movie, to me, I don't care if people don't disagree with me on this here, but I think that's a damn near perfect movie for the reasons for, considering the source material in the cartoon show. I think that movie captures all those things that work so well and did it so good. And I love the film to this very day. I still get very emotional when I watch it, as ridiculous as it may sound. I love that ending, that build up, and then you have that break when he wins the race. I mean, it's just everything about that film is so good. And I'm wondering why people didn't think better of the film despite all these years that's been released. I think this is a bit of a small cult following that's building up for this film, but That's truly an underrated movie too. So I'm not sure if you've seen that film. And if you have, what your thoughts on it are.
Yeah. Here's another movie, because that's what Wachowski's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I think that was one of those films that was released at the time that people weren't ready for it or weren't willing to accept it.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's just not as big of a audience for Speed Racer and enthusiasts of that comic and that lore on the Western side than it does on the Eastern side.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a great job of capturing the imagination of those of the manga and the comics, because it's like, when it's portrayed on screen, you see it happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very visual effects heavy, but that was the intent of it. It was supposed to be cartoonish. It's supposed to have a lot of that comic book vibes, and much in the same way that Sam Raimi was able to capture the look of your neighborhood friendly Spider-Man. Like, I think the Wachowskis did the same with Speed Racer. Was I as tied to the storyline? I don't think I was as crazy about it. But that's mainly because I didn't grow up watching that as much. I was familiar with the source material, but I didn't have a strong tie to the characters. But I thought the movie was like pretty good, like better than what people had given it in the reviews or had critiqued it coming out of the theaters.
It's funny that you say that, because when you say that you didn't grow up with you're aware of the IP. I'm in the same position as you are. Like, I never read the mangas at all. I've seen some of the cartoons here and there throughout the years, but I just thought it was kind of boring, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, the only reason why I was interested in watching the film was because the Wachowskis were behind it, because I love, obviously, what they've done with The Matrix. And so I was very much anticipating what they're going to be doing with this particular film. And it completely blew me away. So I find it interesting that you didn't connect with as much as I did in that respect, because, coming from that, we don't follow the source material in that respect. We're aware of it, but I love that movie, and you like it, but I'm wondering why not as much as as I do, because I think you see the same qualities as I did too, but I'm wondering why you didn't connect as much as I did.
I think part of it is like some of those movies, like, I saw at a later point in my life, when I was looking for something else at that point, much as the same way that, like, I think, between Matrix 1 and Matrix Revolutions to Matrix Resurrections, there's a different story to be told that I was either going with or not going with at a certain point in my life, and I think Speed Racer just came along at a point in which I was like, this was not the movie that I was compelled to like follow, or these were not the characters that I was compelled to follow at this point.
Interesting. Okay.
Like sometimes it takes, like, I could sit and get drawn into a movie, for one reason or another.
Right.
Other times I'll watch it and be like, I know that I'm going in for a popcorn movie, and like, right, that's all I'm gonna get. Like, for me, like Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey, I don't remember a damn thing about those movies. I really don't. But like, did I enjoy it for the time I was in the theater? Yeah. For whatever it was, yeah. Would I watch them again? Probably not Suicide Squad. I might watch Birds of Prey again. But like,
interesting.
But
interesting.
Yeah, like, was I compelled by them, like, to spit graces or go onto like a internet forum and like read up on like the behind the scenes stuff on it? No, not really.
Interesting. Interesting.
So I think I after talking about this, I'll probably watch Man of Steel again for sure. I'll definitely watch Speed Racer again. There's just like,
and
gaps
I'd be really
in my
curious to
memory
hear your
at this
opinions
point.
on that, because I'm wondering if your opinion would change in the matter here, because I think there's something to be said about those movies, because for me, I learned more about there's more that I discover about the film each time I watch it that makes me love the films that much more. Like when I saw Speed Racer with my son, I think last year he saw it for the first time, and I was hyping up the film, which I shouldn't be doing because I think I overhyped things, and then people are like, it was just all right. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll temper that next time. But when he saw the movie, I was like telling him, this is why I love the film. And when he saw it, he was like, now I get it. Now I'm not saying that's gonna happen to you though, but I was trying to like point out that why I thought the film worked and why people didn't like the movie. But figure it out for yourself. But I'm telling you, these are things you should look out for, because those little story beats here, you don't see that very often in these other films of this sort, that I think this film did very, very well, which is take the time to tell the story. Because this is like 2 hours and some change, of maybe a little bit slightly over that. But they had the time to develop the story in such a fantastical way, but it fit perfect for the context of what the source material was. And like, if someone has no idea who Speed Racer is, watches the movie, like, this looks like a bunch of crap here, but you don't understand the source material. And I don't know the source material, but I know the history, and I can understand what they're going for. And that's how I got it. But I found something more meaningful for the film, where you have a great character story, although kind of heightened, of course, but it's still a very good film. If you really look at the end of the day, it's a very well written story, beautifully directed. And when it's exaggerated, it never took me out of the film, because the film is meant to be shown that way. It is meant to be shot that way. So if you consider all these little subtext behind the film, I think if you take the time to look at that under those lenses, you may have a different perspective of the film. I don't expect to be the case here with you, but I think if you look at it, something could change about how you look at the movie. And hopefully in time, you will look at it like, that's a great film, which I would hope will be added into your top 10 if you would be asked that question again, where you can actually look and say, Speed Racer is a good film. Like, that's what I hope would happen for you personally.
No, totally. And I mean, I think, that's my tying back to our Marvel discussion. I think that's where I'm sort of going, like, I get why they want to do these Disney Plus series to like have time to elaborate on it. But what I'm missing is a lot of these like strong character developments. I think WandaVision did a great job of it.
Yeah.
I think other ones, I think Hawkeye actually did a good job of expanding on Clint Barton's character, and also introducing Haley Steinfeld's character, Kate Bishop. But I think, there's certain ones in there, certain series that I don't feel like it's going far enough, or it just feels like a segue device to get to another plot point.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest worrying concern, because I get that, like, trying to translate all the storytelling that you want in a comic book and then trying to create that into a full-on universe it's a big feat. And I'm not envious of anybody that's trying to create that on screen. I think because of so much of the success of it has led it to it, it almost feels like that's now an expectation. And I hope that, like, I think they were trying to do with Phase 4 was trying to get back to the individual storytelling of each of these superheroes so that we could create it. But now I think what's happening is, like, people are expecting so much more. And then ultimately at the same time, they're trying to drive as much content as much as possible, that, like, I feel like sometimes the storytelling or the character arcs of all these is getting a little left
on the wayside.
Yeah.
I agree with you. You know what's a film that I'm not sure if you saw this here, but did you see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? So
yeah, I did.
That movie, I had time to think about it now. It's odd for me to say this here because it is a Doctor Strange film, but I felt like at the same time it wasn't a Doctor Strange movie, if that makes any sense. Like, it was a connective tissue of all these amalgamation of things that occurred that led up to this one movie, which is going to be the brand, or the like you said before, the segue for other things that we can expect here. But and I'm not gonna lie, I love the idea of the multiverse, because that aspect of the storylines that we get from the comic books could work very well in the film. Be very difficult to pull off, but I think it could work if they do it right, of course. But when I watched the movie the second time around, I remember thinking I walked away with empty calories. There's actually a moment in the movie that I really did enjoy, and believe it or not, it has nothing to do with all the spectacle. It was just a sweet little moment between Strange and Rachel McAdams' character. I forgot her name in the movie. But you know, when they were talking and they're revealing about their personal struggles and being separated and having to loving each other and walking away from each other and so on and so forth, like that was to me, quite frankly, the best thing about the film that I remembered the most. All the other stuff I forgot about, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, and I remember thinking, like, if they kept that momentum throughout the entire story and then added the spectacle, it would have made a lot more. It would have been a lot more meaningful for me personally. So, yeah, I think there's something to be said about how things are going right now with comic book films here. But here's what I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, because with the other, let's use Sony as an example, because this is a big one for me. So Sony's basically doing their own universe, and I haven't seen this movie. My son saw it, like, I don't know, 2 times, I think he said, and he keeps telling me I should watch it, even though I know he knows I'm not going to like it, which was Morbius, which Morbius was pretty much the link to start off the next set of events that we can expect from the overall Sony universe, if you will. And I already knew what was going to happen, before it was released, because I find shit online all the time. But when I found out what was occurring there, I was like, basically, Morbius is not the focus. It's the universe that's the focus, because all of a sudden, what's his name? Vulture shows up almost out of the blue, out of context, and then we just have to accept it on face value because we've seen the films. We know why he's there in the first place. It makes no sense. And what they were doing before with Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the exact same they're doing right now with these films. And they have Kraven the Hunter, which when I read from what Aaron Taylor Johnson was saying about the character, that he's an animal lover, it's like, he was a hunter. He killed these animals. I don't think he was an animal. If he loved animals, just with the purpose of killing them for his own gain. And the fact that they're changing the character to make him more human and more hero-like, if you will, it absolutely made no sense to me. So basically, they're completely diluting something of a character of that sort that is actually a very good character as a villain for Spider-Man, and they're using him as a hero and then diluting what his purpose was. It could work for all I know, but I don't think it will. But I'm curious to hear about when you're seeing the trajectory of other studios, in this case Sony, doing that. Do you think that they are going to more or less face the same problems what they did with Amazing Spider-Man 2, where they had this universe they're trying to set up here and it failed miserably, and then Marvel pretty much shot them to brought them up at a higher level, where they've literally got their most successful film of all time in Spider-Man No Way Home because of Marvel. Now they're branching off on their own. You're not seeing that same level of success here. Instead, you're getting a lot more mixed to negative reactions there. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on studios of that sort. They're trying to replicate that, but having no proper preparation for that.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think it's a big feat and gamble to do. Like, I think the success that Marvel had took a lot of planning, and it took a lot of commitment to, like, you gotta hand it to them, where it was like they didn't really know if it was going to work. They sort of threw a couple curveballs, like the first couple end credit, post credit scenes where they were first trying to connect them was really sort of seeing whether or not they could try to do that. And then I think with Iron Man 2, they started to slowly start introducing other characters, and you could tell that even that as early as then, that movie, I enjoyed it still, but there were moments where you're like, I don't get where this plot is going or what's a segue. And it made for a very inconsistent movie. And that's Marvel doing it. And Marvel was the only one that was able to actually create a universe within universes of movies and create multiple blockbuster successes, if not box office records, whether in COVID or not COVID. And I think, you see that the DC universe realized that they didn't have a well executed plan, where Marvel took the time to be like, all right, let's actually spend time introducing characters in their own solo films so that we can create somewhat of an origin or an idea of following along with these characters, so that by the time that they all reunite into a picture, we give a shit. We give a shit for each of these individual characters and their hardships and struggles of becoming a team. Whereas we didn't really get as much time to develop that. And I'm sure Zach wanted to develop that with the DC universe, you know, and really flesh it out. And I think he was onto something with Batman versus Superman. Like, I think the whole concept of Batman really want to antagonize Superman, like, because he destroyed his city, like, and like put people at jeopardy. I think that's a lot more like, I would like to see more of that in movies. And like, ultimately, I want, when the X-Men to be introduced, to have a similar vibe where there is a fear of these superheroes and these people with mutant abilities being out in the public, you know? But, you know, I think, you know, in developing those universes, you have to really have faith in your source material and then actually allowing for that time to happen. And, you know, even though Sony is introducing each of these characters one-on-one, I don't think people are giving a shit as much of a shit as they're supposed to, because they're not as popular of a character as Spider-Man. Spider-Man's already their biggest, you know, ticket, and you're creating a Spider-Verse, you know?
That and Venom,
it's like,
too.
Yeah. But like, I mean, even Venom, like, the movies aren't really that strong, you know? Like, I think, you know, I think they took a few liberties there, and I think Tom Hardy's a great actor, but the movies are far from perfect. And I think in order to create a multiverse of things, you sort of have to have much more than stellar, like much better than just mediocre films, you know? Like, you can't have a Morbius. You can't have a Morbius. You can't have like I think Venom was successful enough because it's a popular enough character, and if you have it played right, it's okay. But like, even like, you know, before, you know, some of the Marvel properties that were not before MCU existed, you know, I mean, like I love a Nick Cage, but Nick Cage as Ghost Rider.
I'm in the same boat as you. I like the films for what they are. That they try to do. They're not my go-to, but I'll be honest, I would watch this a Nick Cage, a Ghost Rider film over a Black Widow movie. So, I mean, and they're not the greatest films either. But there's something about his performance that I really love as the character. But he's not my go-to guy as the guy who I would suggest would be Johnny Blaze. But
who would you cast as Johnny Blaze?
Well, you know what's funny? I don't know who I would have casted here, but what Ryan Gosling was being interviewed because he's promoting the movie The Gray Man, and they were asking him, you know, would you like to be in a superhero movie? He's like, yeah. In fact, I'll just throw it out there. I would love to play Ghost Rider. When he said that, I was like, oh, I can see that. That I can see. Could it work? Considering his gravitas and considering how invested he is when it comes to the material, I think he could do something really good with the character if Marvel allows him. You know, the fact he's playing Ken in the Barbie film, kind of threw me off a little bit. Not in the bad way. Just I just didn't expect for him to do that kind of a film that seems kind of oddball in that respect. But then I forgot. Well, he did the movie Crazy Stupid Love, which I thought was a great movie, and he was kind of more or less like a very stereotypical guy where he's this tough guy, this loving guy, and very suave type of guy. But when you start seeing the story progress, he had a lot more depth to that character in a movie that's very much pop culture in a lot of ways. So his performance in a movie for Ghost Rider, I think he can add a lot more. Not to say that Nicolas Cage didn't do that, but a different perspective of the character that I thought the way the Ghost Riders were directed that Nicolas Cage couldn't really pull off as well, because he's a really good actor, you know. But it's I'm sure he's much of a team player where he's like, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it as long as we can do these things here. Sure, no problem. I think Ryan Gosling would be like, I'll do this here, but we got to do it like this. Otherwise, I'm not budging. I think he's that type of guy to do that, where he has a perspective that would work for the story, given the material he's working with here. And if he's got to change something, he'll take that risk to change it for the betterment of the story. So I think he's that capable of an actor to pull it off here. So yeah, it's kind of my long-winded answer there, but I mean, from your perspective, do you think he could pull it off from what you've seen in his line of work?
Yeah, I like Ryan Gosling's work. I think there was that period there where he was sort of like after Drive, where it was like
Great movie too.
Yeah, but like he had, you know, he's sort of a clean cut looking guy, but holds a potential to like do so much more, and like I think he's one of those actors that could tell a lot through his eyes or from like zero dialogue, and you could tell the gravity of who he is as a person. I would just love to see Keanu Reeves do Ghost Rider. Knowing
I
the
never
bike
thought of that.
enthusiast the bike enthusiast that he is, I think also like I think he's in a cool chapter of his life where people are actually starting to like actually see him and regard him as maybe not like a full on like actor, but like I think they see the merit of his abilities and performance,
Yeah,
and
true.
I think he makes a great action star, first of all, and then B, I think he actually can handle that gravity, the emotional gravity of playing a character like that.
Who's one actor that you generally did not like at all before you saw the movie?
As a superhero?
Yeah, superhero, villain, whatever the case may be. Like if someone you heard and thought this is an awful idea, and then when you saw, you're like, "Fuck that, I was wrong. This was perfect casting."
Man, that was a warped perception. I mean, I'm gonna say like this is a stereotype, but like a Heath Ledger, I remember when he was announced, I was like, they really casted him as a Joker, and then he played a mean Joker. I'm trying to think of other actors like off the top of my head that I was like, that seems like a wrong casting choice. I think Mark Ruffalo as Incredible Hulk was weird to me, but it totally worked. Man, that's a loaded question, my friend. Yeah, you got any to your mind that you can think of right now?
I really can't think of any right now. I mean, the only thing I can think of really in that arena is where, I'm going to use Pattinson as an example. When they had announced that he was going to play Batman, I was like, perfect casting. I was like, I knew he's going to do, because I've seen, I'm sure you've seen his movie too, outside of the Twilight films, which I've only seen one, but he's a really good actor. And when a lot of people were criticizing him, which I think were just people that just did not know his line of work, I'm like, you haven't seen Good Times. You have to see Lighthouse, which is an oddball film, I meant to say. But you look at movies like that, and what was it called, Cosmopolitan, which is a Cronenberg movie, if I recall correctly. That he has a line of work that is so good that people overlook those things. They only see the franchise that he's in Twilight. So when I saw this movie, The Batman, I knew he was going to be good, but honestly, I was blown away with how good he really was, and the direction they took with this character, where it was kind of like reverse engineering in a lot of ways, where he started off pissed off, and then he came to that realization that I shouldn't do it this way. I got to do it this other way. And I thought he did a great job in having that development to justify that decision making in the way. So without a guy like that to do that, I don't know if the film would have worked as well, but he's a strong actor, so I have every confidence in him with doing that. So, but as far as my original question, can't think of it right now offhand.
Yeah, I think he did some amazing things where, like, I liked a lot of takes, and I don't know how much of it was his own input versus like where they were already taking the direction of his character in that. But I like the idea that the persona of Bruce Wayne hadn't been really developed yet.
Right.
He was very much still operating from an adolescent mind point where it was like pure rage, and he was really embodying the Batman in him more so than anything else. And that it was only like, we'll see what the future installments I'm imagine, but like I think like just from that story alone, it was a cool take on doing the Batman story where it was like, like what's to separate him from the same people that he's fighting against,
Yeah.
Like
it's funny that
operating from
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, man.
No. That was really where I was going. It was just like, what's to separate you from your enemies? Like if you're operating in that same headspace of, rage and anger and grief,
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. What I was gonna point out next was that I don't know if you already knew this, but Matt Reeves, who wrote and directed this film, or co-wrote and directed the movie rather, a lot of people were wondering, why does Robert Pattinson have this kind of like gothy look to him? He said, well, because I was actually heavily inspired with the look of Kurt Cobain, And I never noticed it at first until like, when he brought that out, and I looked at several pictures where Cobain had that same exact kind of like, mopey look, if you will. And I've never thought that, that would be the influence for that particular character in this film, to have that, I don't know, I guess that to have that kind of a body, that body language where he's just silent and he's pensive and he's clearly occupied with something in his mind. And when I look at Kurt Cobain now, especially in those older pictures and even the interviews too, I'm like, I can see it now, how it came to him to look at him as, to be the inspiration to portray Bab in that light. I didn't really look into it. I just kind of heard it in the headlines here, but when you look at that now, I mean, I'm not sure if you were aware of it, but if you were not aware of it, can you see that performance being influenced by someone of Kurt Cobain being kind of like the model for what they were kind of go for Bruce Wayne in this movie?
For sure. Like, you're talking about somebody that, has endured like a pain silently,
Yeah.
And being tormented about it for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I was, you probably already know that, like, I've been a Nirvana fan since I could remember listening to music, but, so like I definitely could see that portrayal in there, but like, also like they take a lot of like liberties in the performance aspect of it and stuff like that, because obviously it's still like a fictionalized film, but like I definitely see where they're going with it. And I think, the use of the song in the movie actually was probably one of the most fitting and also a good tribute to them in the movie. I didn't feel like it was one of those, like, not to knock back on Snyder or something like that, but like, the use of pop culture music in a movie, like,
I know what you're saying.
Like it was like the Leonard Cohen and Watchmen, like shit, where you're like, was that like, why are you using this song, or like, why is this song really needed? And even like I even had a problem a little bit with Todd Phillips' Joker when he's going down the stairs dancing, and then suddenly it's like AC/DC comes on, and you're like, why that song?
I see
like,
what you're saying.
Why that song used right now in that device? Like, what? Like, it almost sort of broke you from the reality that it was forming, like, and the mood that it's forming.
Interesting.
I think my big example was Zack Snyder, that I was like, wait, what is this use of this pop culture? Is this like sort of like a nod to like all your 90s bros? Like, hey, like, I listen to grunge, like that kind of thing was, I think in Man of Steel, it's like suddenly it's like Seasons from Chris Cornell is playing in the background, and you're like, you're like, what's up with that? Is it because he's like chopping logs right now and like at like a random gas station? Like, like I don't really know the intent for you using the song behind this, besides you just wanted to make a cool soundtrack.
So you think that? No, I'm sorry. You're going to say.
Oh, I was going to say, like, whereas like, you hear like Scorsese use a song, and like he could use like, Gimme Shelter like 5 times in a movie, and like you still wouldn't be like, you're overdoing it. Like, it's like, no, actually, I get what you're trying to do. Like, what kind of mood you're setting, how you're segueing with the song. I think there's more intent and plausibility behind it than I'd say like in some of these other directors and their use of it. That was a really long way of putting that. I thought something in the way it was used really well.
Well, it's fun because you mentioned Scorsese, because one example comes to mind which is a song that you wouldn't expect to see in a movie of this sort. Where with Goodfellas, at the end of the movie, they had Sid Vicious rendition of "My Way," the Frank Sinatra song, and it worked very well with that scene, and especially with getting to the credits and all. I agree with you. It's okay. This is the one thing I will agree with you about Snyder's choice of music. Yes, I do agree that the music were too on the nose, in my opinion, when it comes to how they were used. But I don't disagree with them. But I think that's where it became more style over substance. To some degree, I would say.
Yeah.
But but here's the thing about since we're on the topic of the music here with the Batman. with that song, Something in the Way, what I loved about the two things that the film, I think the promotion of the movie did very well, which was they used a song that most people who are fans of Nirvana would know, but then they alter it and it still didn't take away or distract from the actual song in itself. In fact, it helped with the song for the purposes of what we were seeing, in this case, the trailer, where it became this amped up version of a very melodic and acoustic song. And then when you watch that in the movie, never once did I felt distracted. Well, I like that version better. It actually fit very well with the scene, quite well, actually. And they played that song, if I recall correctly,
twice.
Yeah. The beginning and somewhere towards no, not the beginning. Well, yeah, it was in the beginning and then towards the end as well. But it all paid off very well and very effectively too. So I do agree with you on that. So yeah, I think you're right.
Because like there are some times where I'm like I could go in a movie and be like, all right, that's a great soundtrack. Like I was that 15-year-old kid going into like a fucking Zach Braff movie and being like, I love this movie because that soundtrack kicks ass, and then like I watch it like years later and be like, that movie is a piece of shit, but I go, there's just sometimes where I go like, I can ride for a good soundtrack. It just has to have intention for me, and that's not to say that every time Snyder's used something bad. I think he nailed it on the head with Dawn of the Dead. I think like Johnny Cash being used at the beginning credits as like all this like really terrible footage is going on, and to this day I still think that's that's his strongest movies for me, at least. Watching it, I felt like there was a strong intent behind it. I felt like it carried that genre to a different height, and everyone copied it after that.
Sure.
I think he did a really good job with that one. But every now and then I like when I see a movie that uses like an old pop song or like maybe I'm holding on to it too much, like holding on to sacred music for me. But like sometimes I see it used in films and stuff like that, and I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what was your intent for that? Like, okay, Thor, Love and Thunder.
Yeah,
I love that movie, but you use like 4 different Guns N' Roses songs like throughout the entire movie.
I did think though that the way they use November Rain, I actually liked it a lot. I thought that was much better used than Sweet Child of Mine. Welcome to Joe was used okay in my opinion, but November Rain was handled beautifully, I thought, in that particular sequence there. Well, so for you then, since we're on subject on music, what's one soundtrack or song specifically written for a movie that you thought was really, really good for the purposes of the film and holds up well to this day? Like what's the soundtrack and or movie or song that you thought worked very well for the film?
That's a good one. Right now I'm drawing a blank, but Gimme Shelter and Goodfellas was definitely one that stuck out of my memory. I think Big Lebowski with Bob Dylan.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I think is a great one. Like that, every time I hear it, I think of that movie. And it's like it just sets the precedence for what you're about to watch. Like I'm sure I could think of more if I like thought about the soundtracks. Like I used to pay attention to a lot more scores, but like if you're talking like pop culture, like sort of soundtracks,
I can throw 2 right now at you.
Yeah, please throw something.
So the Crow soundtrack is a phenomenal soundtrack. That's a great soundtrack. That's a great album in my opinion, and they use the songs in the films quite well in my opinion. And believe it or not, I love the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. I think that's one of the greatest movie soundtracks I've ever heard in my life.
You're talking about the original Mortal Kombat,
yes, the original
like 96, one. Right?
Yeah, no, 95.
Dude, I had that tape. That tape I fucking played from beginning to end. That shit got so warped.
Yeah.
But didn't it have like KMFDM on there and like Tracy Lords and all these great techno tracks?
Yep.
Yeah, I rocked that soundtrack pretty hard.
Yeah.
I would say the original Matrix was the same deal for me.
Yeah.
That shit was fire. It had like propeller heads. Manson before we all knew Manson was terrible.
Yeah.
And like that also had like cyberpunk kind of soundtrack to it.
Yeah.
I was the Garden State fan. I was like the Garden State soundtrack fan, where it was like, oh, this is cute indie sort of soft rock type shit. And that really sold the movie for me. Like I remember seeing that trailer, and it was like, was it Frou Frou that was on the soundtrack?
I don't remember. It's been a while since I heard the soundtrack. I don't think I've heard it since I saw the film, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that wasn't bad. That was a pretty good one. But like, yeah, I'm drawing a blank to like more of those films. I sort of paid attention more to scores for a while, and like I think the new Batman, I think that score is phenomenal.
Same here.
That they've done that for. All like Ennio Morricone scores for like the Sergio Leone films are obviously amazing.
Yeah.
And iconic.
I like Jerry Goldsmith. He did the one score to a movie that I think is so good. You've seen the movie Rudy before, have you?
Yeah.
So remember at the end of the film when he finally gets a chance to play in the field, there's that score in that sequence is so good, but it's done by Jerry Goldsmith, and he was also responsible for what he had done on, I think it was First Blood, if I recall correct, which I thought was a great score too. But you know, like I always love the buildup. You know, when you have the big buildup and that stick out. Like for example, like one of the biggest problems I think Marvel had, since we're going back in the comic books here, the music were forgettable. They had nothing that you could remember, and then you get Avengers Endgame, and you have that big buildup, dun dun dun, and then you have that big payoff, and it all blended so well. And I was like, why can't they just do that with every movie? Which I think is becoming one of the more bigger issues that I've come across, at least for me, and not just with the comic films, but just films in general, where the scores aren't always as memorable as they used to be, at least for me personally, because I think I remember I saw a discussion with a lot of composers, Danny Elfman, I forget who, Hans Zimmer, if I recall correctly, where they were talking about how a lot of studios are wanting them to play the score a certain way that is more cost effective. So in other words, instead of just having a big orchestra, why can't you just use one little beat here and just keep that consistent across the board, because it's not too expensive and we don't have to, and it fits well for the scene. But you know, when you take the time to have like John Williams, who is going to score every aspect of the movie, when you look at him for a score that I think is beautiful, that he had done, one of my favorite movies of all time is Munich, with Eric Bana. That score to that film is fucking unbelievable. Like I think it's one of his best scores he's ever done. And I also love the score that he did for Catch Me If You Can. Like if you look at Munich, you know, his line of work, it's vastly different for the most part, especially those two films, because Catch Me If You Can is very 60s like, which he's very consistent with. Munich is definitely much more operatic, but it's very mellow, very melancholy, and it's just done so beautifully. But that's what I believe is missing in a lot of films these days, where when the Batman came out, I was like, I was excited for the film, for not just for the the overall film, but the music itself too, because the music had substance behind it that fit very well for the characters and then the scenes and so on and so forth. So yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent here about that, but yeah, but I mean, I'm wondering, you know, if you feel like if scores, whatever, if you think this, because I don't know, when I hear best scores, I don't have anything that can go off that's memorable in the last, I would say 20 years, with the exception of a handful of films that have some very memorable scores.
Right.
But even those scores, I'm not saying don't hold up. I'm not saying that, but I remember the scores from decades ago more over these current scores right now, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure how your perspective on that is here.
Yeah, well, I think styles also change too, right? Like how we utilize those scores and how we want to see those films. Because I think, you know, the time that in the 70s with John Williams, it was like big brass fanfare, like, you know, and there's still like film score that, like period pieces use that, you know. But I think like soundtracks sort of changed, but depending on what's trending. Like how many soundtracks and scores have we heard after Inception that is all just even the Batman. I love the Batman soundtrack, but like it's the same use and emphasis of these like big, like, like slow brooding, like crescendos that just like keeps getting louder and louder. But like, it's very effective in what it does. But then there's people like, I think one of the more interesting like careers that I've seen is like Trent Reznor going into score soundtracks. You listen to a soundtrack like Social Network, and then you hear something like Soul, and you're like, wait, you did Soul?
Yeah.
Like, and like, dude, I remember watching Soul, and like when like that music came on at a pivotal moment, I did the thing that I do with like all Pixar and like Disney movies now, where I just like bawled my eyes out.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Yeah.
But it's like I totally get it, but yeah, I think I think there's I think that the trend in music or in scoring is always evolving and changing, just like pop culture and music. It's there things are going in and out of phases, and we're sort of in this weird conglomerate like 80s like big compressed snare drum, like and 808s mixed with like sort of 90s like techno house now, and like that's like where the trend is going. And I'm sure soundtracks are going to go that way in a way too, where we're starting, like you see things like trending with like Stranger Things, and like like I don't think it's a coincidence like, Kate Bush is now like re-popping up on the charts. I think that there is a drive to have that kind of like air of nostalgia because of people our age, and then like going into the workforce and being the creators behind this. But then also like I think that's just a cycle of trends, and like at some point, loud guitar rock is going to be back on the soundtrack, and like 90s rom-coms are going to be like the real deal again.
What'd you think of the sound the score to Mad Max Fury Road? Do you think that was
dude,
what did you think of that when you first saw it?
Oh my god, I saw that way later than I needed to. I saw that like 2 or 3 months ago. The first time. Yeah, that shit blew my mind at how awesome and how cool it is. Like, talk about being committed to a vision for like much longer than you need to.
Yeah,
because that was who's the director on that?
George Miller.
That's right, George Miller. Who like held on to this idea to do this installment for like what in 15-year production hell or some shit.
Yeah.
And then like by the time that he was ready to do production, like Australia was in the middle of like a windstorm, and they had to like move the production all over to like Africa to do.
Yeah, I think it's South Africa if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that's crazy. And like still do as much practical stunts and effects in camera as possible, It looks beautiful, it looks magnificent, and you're talking about a movie that had no script and was just all storyboarding, which is like crazy.
Yeah, that's the first and only time I saw a movie in theaters where I literally got up after watching the movie when I had to catch my breath. Like it was I remember just being like blown away with it, because I haven't had because I just did a review not too long ago where I pointed this out, where I haven't had that kind of experience where I literally walked like, what the fuck did I just watch? I was blown away with the movie, and I had to just catch my breath here because I was literally like I think I was holding my breath for a lengthy period of time, not realizing that I was doing it because I was just in awe with what I saw. And when I saw Top Gun Maverick, I had that same exact feeling. I haven't had that since then.
Oh my God. I'm Top Gun Maverick. Talk about a movie that was meant for theaters.
Yes. Shouldn't
have been good as it was. But fucking I was sold on every single second of that. Like my girlfriend makes fun of me because I left the theater with like back sweat down my entire back, like because of the adrenaline from that like climactic like dogfight,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like Tom Cruise, you're a fucking madman. Like, you're a Scientologist, you're nut, cuckoo, whatever, but you are a great action star because of it, like, and the fact that you are like, you are so committed to your craft as a performer and an actor that you're like, I want to get all these actors trained in pilot training so that we can actually get these cameras in the cockpit and get you flying so that we could see all this on screen. Like, that's probably never going to be done again on screen for like another few decades, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that movie, like, it's funny because when they announced that they were going to do a sequel, I'm not gonna say I didn't have a high expectations, but I was just hoping, I hope it's good. That's all I had in my thoughts in the film. And then when I saw the trailer for the first time, I was like, this is going to be an amazing movie. Just from what you saw alone, like, and just the images and the realism of that they have for the jets doing what they're doing, because I don't know terminology, but seeing that movie, I remember it was like just everything. I expected that movie to be great, and it was even greater. It was one of those rare times where I walked and was like, I know I'm going to walk away with a great view and experience, but it's that an experience. Like, I didn't want to feel like that's a great movie. No, I wanted a great experience. And again, I haven't had that kind of experience like that since Mad Max Fury Road, which I was just blown away with the spectacle. But there was so much substance behind that. Not once did I feel like, they could have worked on this and that. I mean, I don't think I have any really major critiques with the movie as far as Maverick's concerned, but
no,
there hasn't been anything like that of that sort of that kind of impact in quite some time. So
no.
And I don't know if the movie would have been made without Tom Cruise, though, honestly.
No, you couldn't. And like, you know, I think we could do a whole entire podcast just on Tom Cruise alone, because I think there's a lot to be said there. Because I had my friend and I always talk about this, because we're like, as a performer, as an actor, like, you know what you're going to get out of Tom Cruise, but I think because he's so committed to the magic and the lure and love of cinema, he knows exactly how to get it done, you know. And I first started taking notice with the later Mission Impossible installment.
Oh yeah,
where you're like, oh, he's pulling a like rule book out of or like a sheet out of like Jackie Chan's like whole entire thing. It's like, show people the action. Show people so that you could sort of leave them, you know, you sort of do the Buster Keaton thing where you sort of suspend people's belief for a moment. So that they can sort of be like, well, is that real? Or is that not real? Like, how did they do this? That's cool. And it forces you to want to watch it in the big screen experience, because you're like, I can't believe you just did that. And I think it was like the scene where he's like hanging out of the airplane in Mission Impossible 5, where you're like, wait, what the fuck? And you're like, you're literally dangling off this plane as it's taking off on the runway, like, and it's carrying you up into the sky, like however many thousand feet. Like, regardless of whether or not you were harnessed in or had to wear special contacts or whatever, that's some crazy ass shit. But
you know, and that's the thing too, that, you know, it's funny because, you know, the new Mission Impossible that's going to come out next year was Dead Reckoning Part 1. So, you know, when I saw the trailer, I mean, I expected it to be amazing, and it was. But there's a scene in the movie where you see, you know, it's Cruise going down this mountain top and then going off this kind of like this sort of this half pipes type of a little setup where he's just jumping off this cliff on the bike. So I had come to find out that they were preparing for that specific shot for literally months, because what they wanted to do is they had to be real according for what Tom Cruise wanted to accomplish here, but they had to train for that. So they built like this, like kind of like a makeshift, you know, hill, if you will, to practice and get in the shots that they need. So as he got better and better, it gradually got bigger and bigger to the point where they can mimic the actual size of what they were trying to go for, but everything had to be shot through a drone. So it was a matter of them really training to get the execution right, but also getting the camera at the right spots. And they had to do that over and over again. So by the time they got to the set, they've already practiced it enough times to the point where, okay, so when we get to this part right here, the drone's got to be from here to there to there, so we can get this full view of when he comes off the mountain like that. It's going to revert right back to him. And they had to practice that for months and months on end just to get that one shot.
For the new trailer?
That's for the new one. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen this, so you're sort of blowing my mind right now. I feel like I need to watch it.
I think you would come away because when it's that little part that I'm talking about, it's a very small snippet of the movie, but that's a legit stunt that you're seeing that he's doing. But the way that the drone is moving around, they had to literally practice for that for months just to get that right moment of the shot that they needed. So they worked on it for such a long, just for that one snippet of the film, and they worked on it
like
for
you're
months.
Talking about some serious commitment right there,
right?
Because like you already know that, like, for him to get his pilot license, his helicopter license, like all these things, those are all like 2,000 hours worth of like work.
Yep.
So like you're talking to a guy that's just dedicated to doing his shit.
Yeah.
You know, which you got to give kudos and respect for. Like I know I wouldn't have the patience for it, or if somebody goes, "Hey, a stuntman can do this for you," like I'd be like, "Well, how hard is a stunt?" They're like, "Well, you could be paralyzed, you could die." Like, okay, all good. This stuntman will do it for me. That's good.
Yeah.
You know, like that's some crazy stuff that he's willing to do. So it's like, if Scientology is making him feel like an alien god, you know, whatever, man. Like,
well, you know, I think what with him though, you know, one of the things that a lot of people have pointed out with him is that his work ethic is literally second to none. Like, I think a lot of people come to realize that, holy shit, this guy is doing these things, and then he's expecting me to keep up with that. I think a lot of people didn't realize the amount of commitment that was required for them to be able to not necessarily just keep up with him, but to really match or meet the expectations that was required of him and everyone else participating in that as well too. You know, because I think one of the biggest things that some people would probably criticize him for, I mean, removing his religious views, but I'm just talking about like how, like that one audio tape that came out where he was blowing up on the crew for not following the COVID protocols. You know, and some people were like, well, he shouldn't have been yelling at them and this, and they caught all that for insurance purposes. And he did say that, you know, hey, listen, we have a job to do, and we're trying our absolute best to try and keep everyone working. And if these guys are not going to listen, they're going to hear it. And I honestly agree 100% with that too. And it's the same thing with the whole Christian Bale thing too that happened with Terminator Salvation, which, you know, and people criticize him for that. I was like, nah, he had every right to do that here, because I've never worked on a set, but I've talked to enough people for me to understand that. I mean, you've shot some stuff too. I've seen some of the stuff you posted on your Instagram account where you shot little sequences here and there. Those little few minutes that you have posted on your account, on your Instagram feed, that probably took hours to shoot, right?
So, well, I mean, that one in particular, like, you know, like that was like, you know, really sort of playing more into almost like guerrilla filmmaking in a way, where we knew we only had like a finite amount of light, finite amount of time to shoot something. And so like, it was really about being in a place and then sort of getting ready and then just sort of going for it. And like, we did like 1 or 2 takes of everything, you know.
But how long did it take to get everything prepped up leading up to that moment for you to figure, okay, that's the light we need. We're going to have from here. Like, how long did it take to get all that set up?
I mean, honestly, like that thing that if you're talking about the video that I think of, it's the one where me and Matt are going on a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
That was literally me and Matt moving him across the country.
Right.
So we were doing things in almost like real time, and it was really just in breaks of days or in breaks of driving where we were like some of the locations we would find like on the way to our hotel for the night or something like that. And we're like, we need to stop back over here. Maybe we could stop after lunch and catch it when the sun's a little bit down.
Yeah,
you know.
But that patience,
or like catch it right at high noon, so it looks real bright, you know.
Right.
And then some days like we caught like a complete forecast, and then you're like, all right, like, do we shoot this day or do we just do like weird interiors when there's like indirect light or something like that? That was really just sort of seeing what we were capable of doing, like, and having fun with bringing a camera along and being like, how, like, if we're gonna go on this road trip, we might as well just and had time to kill, might as well see what we can try to capture on this. And like, I mean, like stopping over the Grand Canyon was one of those where we were like, and that was one of those days where like we caught rain a little bit on that day. So like there was a bit of forecast going over Grand Canyon, but you're like, well, shit, I'm here. Like I might as well try to get some epic footage, and then we'll create sound bites where we can, but that was really more like guerrilla filmmaking. But like I'm like currently like shooting on a production right now, and like the COVID protocol thing is real.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much every time you go on set, you have to do another COVID test.
Like once or twice a day?
Is 24 or 40.
Is it once or twice a day for whenever you guys go back on set?
Yeah. Like, so basically if you do, you have to do it like 2 days before you go on set. And some productions will require you to do one the day of too, when you get to set. And then if you do it consecutively in like a 2-day period or whatever like that, you could usually be okay. But even right now, like with some cases rising with like the new variant or whatever, like it's shutting down some productions, and there's definitely delays, and there's you don't think about the issues, but like for productions, it's like there's so many people that are involved that like one person goes out, that's gonna set things behind. Like, like we have a person in production that's like in quarantine, but it changes and alters the chemistry of the whole entire project. People become much more conscious about it, and then like you sort of go back into sort of like early COVID protocols where you have to separate people out based on their departments, to make sure that everyone's ensures a safety. And then you think about like, with like, productions that are like starting after COVID time, like whereas before you could like do a big cattle call for a lot of background actors or, big public spaces, you see like a production studio like Marvel or something like that doing even more green screen time or like smaller set design and then like green screens to avoid having to have that many people, around.
Interesting.
Because that will delay sets even further too. So it's like it's a whole thing.
And also adding the COVID testing too does take away a bit from the budget as well too, where beforehand it probably would have been used elsewhere. I would imagine.
Yeah.
Too, right?
Yeah, you pretty much have to allocate like a health budget now, like for even just like the rapid COVID testing. You're talking like you have to pay your people to take the COVID test, and then you also have to pay the people that are doing the COVID tests. So that's like an extra, anywhere like 300 or so like per person that you're using.
Jesus Christ.
So like you're talking like inflated budgets or like budget cuts where they need to. So like, it's definitely interesting, and it's super like I'm fortunate that I've been able to get into some of that work down here, but like it's definitely illustrating like sort of what it feels like in post-pandemic or whatever time frame we're on right now or timeline we're on right now.
Yeah, it's crazy though, because it's funny. I think ever since COVID happened, the little things that we take for granted, that we not intentionally, but we're just accustomed to a certain lifestyle, that all of a sudden we're forced to isolate ourselves and quarantine ourselves, and then all of a sudden we're slowly kind of get back in the mix of things. You still have a new life to adapt to after the fact here, because because I've talked to quite a few filmmakers as well too, and they're telling me that there's restrictions are up the wazoo when it comes to that, and there's no playing around, because if 5 people are caught with COVID, that's literally probably weeks that's shut down, because we need those core people to be doing X, Y, and Z, and without them, we can't just bring someone else to fill in, because they have to cut up to speed, and there's just all these different complications that will fall through with that here, that beforehand you don't think twice about.
Right. And not to mention, like, you already have like a production schedule where you have certain scenes or settings that you're shooting on a certain day with certain principal actors. Well, if one of them falls through, that upsets the whole entire schedule for that time that you're renting it, that time you're doing everything, and then production gets delayed another week, another 2 weeks. So we're seeing that now. I mean, like, I was supposed to be on this project for like, I was supposed to be finished this past week, and I'm being added for another week because there's been delays in production, which is cool. I don't mind working another day on it, but like it's still like it's definitely part of the new reality where you're like, okay, this is real. So like for me, like, I'm consciously like still wearing a mask at work and stuff like that now, because I'm just like, if I get sick from my day-to-day work and then try to go on set or anything like that, then that compromises me for both jobs,
Yeah.
So
working on sets now, this is like more or less your first time actually being part of a production of this, that caliber, or you've worked on other stuff beforehand and got the experience where you were able to get a gig on whatever production is going on at this point?
Definitely of this caliber, because I'm doing definitely like more big studio projects now. Like when I first moved down here, I did like a Hulu series, which I think will probably be airing pretty soon. But then like a lot of the big productions are down here. So like a lot of things for Hulu, a lot of things for Netflix. I think Marvel does a lot of stuff in Georgia, and then in LA,
in the UK too,
and then wherever they need to shoot. But like most of my stuff down here is usually a lot of the big streaming networks, and then some of the bigger studio projects too also come down here. Anytime they need to shoot something, southern, it's down here. So like Interview with a Vampire, the new one is shooting down here.
That's the series, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they just finished wrapping on that earlier this year. But that should be coming out. That should be exciting because I mean, down here there's some serious work, and you see production trucks everywhere. So it's sort of cool.
It's really that's the norm as in the last 10, 15 plus years for
and I mean, like, I think like after like any of the big storms and stuff like that, work sort of clears out, or if there's like not a tax break, because I think for like a few years there they didn't have any work really coming in as much work, and then in the last couple years or a few years it started coming back in down here.
Interesting. Do you get a chance to work on indie projects too down there? Because I know there's quite a few that goes on out in those parts too. Are you also part
like
of those
indie
projects?
films and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't worked on any of the indie projects down here. I'd like to. Really, I'm just sort of like getting more of the experience of just like being on production for some stuff and seeing what comes through. But like, there's definitely a lot of work coming down here for it, which is cool. Like basically during the busy season from like September all through up until like May, usually, like mainly the summer is the only time that clears out because it's hurricane season. It's so hot.
Yeah.
But most of the year around, like there's multiple productions that you can definitely get involved in. And so that's sort of cool and interesting. And like every now and then you come across like there's a lot of little indie projects and like regional theater stuff. I just haven't really explored that avenue yet. I've really just sort of gotten my ass on like bigger sets and crews and seen how that side works. And it's a nut house, but totally fun.
Is it a well-oiled machine from your experience, or is it kind of like chaotic, but it's a organized mess, if you will?
It varies from production to production. Okay. For the most part, like I would say like the Louisiana crew like is like a pretty tight-knit community. Like you'll see them from one production to another. You'll recognize faces that are like once they're finished on the project, they'll start on the next one. And it's like their full-time work,
Interesting.
But then like, there's like the LA crew that comes through and brings their own people. Most of the actor, like the big principal and talent actors are coming out from out of town. And like most of the time it'll go well. It's just a matter of whether or not you have like a hothead in the, producer's chair or whatever.
Yeah.
That might affect the work, but
when you're talking about the tight-knit community, because I talked to a director not too long ago named Kyle Harris, who's from Oklahoma, but because there's a lot more work out in Oklahoma now with productions being for television, because right now I think they're just about finished shooting up I think the King of Tulsa, Tulsa King, if I recall correctly, the Stallone show that's that's created by Taylor Sheridan. But there's a lot of work out there when it comes to films and TV. But he was telling me that when he was trying to more or less kind of get into a group of guys that he could work with here, it was kind of difficult to kind of break in with that circle, because everyone's developed this inner circle that to allow other people into that crew, if you will, is very difficult for that to happen, because imagine the years of experience working together and probably being screwed over many ways, shape, or form, that to have someone just come in here, you're going to lose that momentum. So right. Since you're out in New Orleans there, getting into that, especially getting to like some pretty high caliber production, was it easy for you to kind of break into that, or did you have to know somebody who walked you through that door?
Yeah, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Like when I was trying to do this stuff in LA, like, you're talking about a really big pond, with a lot of fish that are all trying to do the same thing. Right. And I'm not saying that down here, that's not the case, because I'm sure people are fighting for the same jobs or same positions. I just haven't really felt that. Like, I felt like I've gotten a lot more opportunity to do work down here than I have in either LA or DC doing it. DC, it was like, I just never fit for the role. It was always like a casting for like a politician and or Pentagon worker, kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but just in my own experience down here, I've just been fortunate to be in the right place at the right time for some of these projects, and still like networking and getting myself out there. But I think there's enough projects going on down here, and it's a small enough community of people that are in the film production industry that like it hasn't been necessarily a fight. And now if I was to do film full time, it might be more of a hustle,
right?
But like for me right now, it's still like a bit of a freelance, which I'm fortunate enough to have a little bit more of a steady job that's supplementing the remainder of my income. But I'm doing some decent gigs right now that I'm like pretty happy with where it's been thus far, especially from our first year down here,
Right.
And I'm hoping to just like be able to like just build small increments within like the next year, and then see where it goes after that. But
you miss VA?
I miss VA. I mean, I miss family. I miss friends. I miss doing music. Like, I definitely know that like the Mid-Atlantic, in terms of like being able to jump off and being able to touring in like, touring in city intervals is much easier on the Mid-Atlantic than it is say like in the South.
Yeah.
So I miss that aspect of it. But I do love my neighborhood now. Like, I think Virginia and DC will always be my home. And, I think I'll always gravitate towards it. But I think for me and where I am and my own growth and understanding myself, like New Orleans has been sort of a nice home. Yeah.
It's funny because for me, when I left Virginia, I was happy to be honest with you to leave.
Yeah,
not because it was a terrible place. It's not that. It's just.
Did you grow up there though, or did you?
Yeah, I was born in Arlington, and I lived in Falls Church since I don't know, until I was 18. And then we lived in Centerville, lived in Herndon, lived in Alexandria, worked in various parts in the Northern Virginia area. I have a lot of friends who have lived in various parts, family members as well too. So Northern Virginia for me, there are a lot of great moments I have being up there, but I think in time I started getting a little tired of the growth, but in terms of population, like it started getting more overcrowded as the years had gone by. Like I remember when I was a kid going to Centerville as a kid, there was farms out there and it was a 20-minute drive. By the time we moved out there, it was a hour, probably an hour and a half. And that's not including 66 to get to 29.
Right.
So it was, it became kind of a job just to get home. And I didn't like that at all. And I wanted to get away from that. And everything was getting a little too expensive. And, there, and not to say there's not great parts in the area. There are plenty of great parts. I would have liked to have stayed. But then I think about how long would it take to get home just to go to DC or, and because when I lived in Falls Church, it was easy for me to get around through DC and Arlington because I just take the back roads, and most people didn't know that very well, especially they're moving in. So it was easy to cut through the traffic in that respect. But as soon as I had to go down to like Haymarket or Centerville, there was only one way through, and you're like,
there's only a couple main roads that you could take.
Yeah, and it was just it was a problem for me, and I didn't feel the need to stick around much longer at that point. And by that point, I wanted to move anyways. So when we came down to North Carolina, it was it's gonna sound kind of strange, but it was everything that I wanted. But it took me a while to appreciate it, if that makes any sense. Like I love the atmosphere, and I love the Americana look. Because growing up as a kid, I'm sure you may have felt this way too. When I watched like Dennis the Menace the movie, like that's the kind of neighborhood I want to live in. Home Alone, like that's. So there was a lot of that here in where I live, and being that it was much more affordable. I mean, we've got a place here that we own, and it was like it took a while for me to really comprehend the appreciation that I've developed for the community that I live in, that I wanted in Virginia. And once I came down here, everything that I wanted in Virginia, I got here. And the things that I missed about Virginia, or parts of Virginia, I should say, I was able to find here. Once I started exploring the area, like realized, I tell people all the time, like if you just drive around your neighborhood, you'd be very surprised what you could find. I literally drove for like I think the first 2 years, like nonstop, just driving around the neighborhood. I found a place not too far from where I live where they have zebras literally in the property. I'm not making this up. So I talked to somebody not too long after I saw that. I said, "Yeah, I saw this place where I live, not too far. It's on this street and so on." And I saw a zebra, and I think I saw a peacock there, an emu or something. It's like, oh yeah, that's a family that owns these animals because they go to these like festivals where they bring these animals to, for kids to pet or whatever else. Like it's kind of like their business. I was like, I had no idea. And it is well fenced around the area. Then we also have ostriches not too far from where I live too. And there's literally a sign, it's a place out in Kings Mountain. It's not far from where I live. They literally have signs out that says, if you find this ostrich, please call this number, because apparently the ostrich escapes all the time. I had no idea that existed out here. Awesome. So like, and not to say I never got that in Virginia, but I never got that sense of like exploration and the satisfaction they got out of the just that connection in that respect that I haven't felt in quite some time. When I was a kid growing up, I found those little spots here and there, but then it started being taken away where more buildings were being put in there, and it just kind of diluted that atmosphere that I loved so much as a kid growing up. And I was getting that back here once I moved down to North Carolina. So, I'd say I don't miss Virginia. I don't have any rush to want to go back, but if I do go back, I know for a fact a lot's going to change to the point where I think I might not even recognize it anymore, because my sister just came down.
For sure. I mean, how long has it been since you've been back?
Probably 4 years, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
My sister just came back recently. She was in Virginia about a few weeks ago, and she's like, "Oh my God, Herndon's changed. It's almost unrecognizable. Manassas changed, and all these buildings and this and that." And I was like, I could imagine. It's like, yeah, but it's literally like night and day. Like I remember as a kid growing up, Arlington, I saw that transition. I saw that development as a kid growing up.
Right.
The last time I was in Arlington was that last time I was in Virginia. So much had changed. Like, holy fuck, what happened to this store? And like, used to be a food store there. Now it's a Harris Teeter. And I was like, what? Like just all those little details I just grew up with here were completely gone. The one thing that I was happy that was still there, and I know it's still there now because I talked to somebody about this recently, is that Bob and Need is still on Columbia Pike in Arlington.
Yeah.
So if I go back
to
Virginia,
another location for it too.
Yeah, his third telling me too in Springfield,
Bob and Need is still
Clarendon,
there. Yeah. Polo Rico is still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're still kicking it strong. They were like my pandemic like bloodline.
Yeah, and like I remember in Falls Church, I hope they're still there. I remember Super Chicken on Lee Highway, or now I think they just changed the name now, or I think it might be Washington Street if I recall correctly, on 29, nearby Victory Comics. It was just right up the street. That was my fucking jam. It was so good,
right?
And I love those parts of the area where you have these little, not to say hole in the walls, but just hidden gems. So when I came here, there is a shit ton of that around here. So, Virginia I started to get a little more disconnected as the years have gone by, to the point where, it's kind of like, I have great memories, not so many great ones like any other place, but it's become too distant for me now that I just don't have as much as connection as I used to, other than certain memories and pockets of moments in my life that I will cherish. But outside of that, not so much.
And ultimately, like, I think like as we get older and our lives get busier, whether it's like we're prioritizing family, prioritizing career, prioritizing whatever, like the things that we held on to just sort of aren't going to be as dominant of a force in our lives. Like I think like, I talk with this about, like with my partner, like moving down here, like, and the anxieties of, leaving a place where we had so many friends and stuff. I was like, like the good thing about having lifelong friendships is like your friendships are always going to be there with people that like you care about and they care about you, like you will always make a time to check in on each other. And like, if they're not supporting you in your moves and your goals, like, then maybe the friendship wasn't a really a valued friendship, But I was like, any good friend will support the growth that you need to do, whether it's, finding a new job or relationship or a career, or like a new home, and we don't know whether this is going to be, permanent, it might be transient as any other place, but like, I definitely know that like, if we do move from here, we're going to miss the hell out of this place, because there is a vibrant community of like really creative types and like really people that like sort of stuck to their own guns, like you could tell that like they were not, that wherever they came from, they were also shunned too, and like in a way, like the city sort of helped them find their own identity and be a part of that, and the city's full of weird people and I love it. Like they're good weird people.
It's funny because I talked to this is a long time ago. Before we officially moved down here to North Carolina, I was talking to a realtor about looking into possibly buying a home in like somewhere like nearby the West Virginia border or in West Virginia. And she was from New Orleans and she was born and raised there. And she had a I wouldn't say a Cajun accent because she did have Creole in her family. You can tell there's very much influence in there. But I'm sure that as the years have gone by, it kind of got watered down a little bit. But she was able to put it back on. And when I asked her, can you still put it on? She's like, yeah. But one thing she had told me about her perspective, I don't know how it is now, obviously, but I was like, New Orleans has a specific identity, but one of the major identities is the people there, but it's also the accent too. Like, the Cajun accent is one of the major staples of that city, where I'm noticing a lot more now that people who are born and raised in New Orleans, I'm not saying they're not Cajun, but they don't have that dialect anymore. I'm not sure if it's still very much prevalent. And she was saying, at least at that time, that it's still very much there, but it's like pockets of areas just outside of the city with very little left of it in the city. And that was one of the things that she felt like was the most heartbroken about, because that was an identity that I loved about, my city, that it's starting to slowly get away, where more people are coming in. And she wasn't disparaging anybody about, everyone's ruins. It wasn't that, but she definitely felt like because of that part of the identity for the city is slowly starting to get away. And she was afraid that at one point it's going to be almost like, now I would say obsolete, but just completely gone. That now it's just history rather than part of the culture, more or less, if that makes any sense. So I'm not sure if for yourself, when you first came down or visited there beforehand, if you may notice when you first came down there, like certain things that were very much the identity of the city that later on, as you came back and stayed there full time, you realize like, yeah, this is not like what it used to be from what I remember X amount of years ago, if you ever been there before.
No, I hadn't been there, but I think I never explored like the New Orleans I knew before this past 2 years, I would say, because I visited last year before I moved down here, and I got to finally experience some of it. But like even like experiencing it as a visitor versus experiencing it as a resident, I'm still learning so much about it, and I definitely feel a little bit more tied to the neighborhood now, and I'm in like a sort of trendy up and coming neighborhood, so I'm sort of in that like right on that cusp type of feeling where it's like you could tell there's a lot of old residents here and then there's also like a lot of short-term rental spots around here, and like you could tell that it's a transient neighborhood, and that some people move down here from other places, and much like us, but I generally like my neighborhood a lot more than some other places that like either never changed or sort of was like the Georgetown of DC, like was meant to be sort of excluded,
I see what you're saying.
And you could tell that those neighborhoods are like always manicured, and there's a certain aesthetic and look that's like stays there, whereas like
it's the standard pretty much, right?
Yeah. And I think all major cities are going through it. I think post COVID, there's a lot of people that the people that could afford to buy out property are doing it. And they're doing it in all the cool places that you're like, man, you're fucking gonna ruin this place for sure.
Yeah.
And you see the construction going up. Like this neighborhood is definitely like, and I say this knowing very well that the like condo that we're staying in is one of the newer developments, but like there's new developments going up everywhere, and they're doing like multi-home units in places where there were traditionally shotgun homes, and so you see houses that are here that are like abandoned and dilapidated, and they're right next to like brand new like condo developments down here, and you're like, well, fuck.
So it's kind of like Detroit in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And like, I mean, with that being said, we still get our Amazon packages stolen off of our front porch, or, like I just don't order anything online now, but that's the nature of this neighborhood. Like there's definitely like a disparity for sure.
Interesting. Since we're kind of in the matter of like our lives here, what I wanted to get your perspective on here is, when you, because I didn't ask you or Tim the last time when we were talking here, but when you had to leave Virginia, because I'm sorry, you didn't tell me at the time you were leaving Virginia, but I think the question I was going to ask here, but this leads me to what my real question is going to be here, which is that as you started getting older, and more and more, you started developing relationship with various people, more or less in the music scene, that I know you're still very much passionate about here, because you obviously mentioned before that you miss it. But as you started getting older, has anything changed for you about how you look at yourself when it comes to your passion, your hobbies, that may have more or less taken a back seat because you found out there are more important matters that you have to focus on more? And those things you're putting a backseat on were something you truly do care about, and it was hard for you to kind of push it to the side because you knew that the priorities are in play that are in front of you have to be handled first before you can get to more or less your passion. So, when you leaving Virginia, going to New Orleans, you mentioned, I'm getting the impression that you don't play much music as you used to. And that's, I would imagine, it's kind of burning inside of you in a little bit. I'm sure you still play from time to time on your own, but having Tim and everyone around to play somewhat consistently, is there a part of you that wishes that you could change something to give you that artistic freedom to go back to playing more consistent like you did before while you were in Virginia?
I mean, that's a good question. I think those guys, full heart, like, are musicians, by and by. Technically they're musicians. Technically they're like proficient. They practice, they study, they try to do as much as they can as a musician and do that. I don't think I ever was as proficient as a musician. And realistically speaking, like, I don't think I practice as much. I always approached it differently. Like, my motivations for doing music was always different from them. Like, I think, for them, it's like, as long as we're playing music, I'm good. Or like, if I'm involved in it in any way, I'm good. Whereas I always struggled with it, even doing my own music. Like, I was always my own worst critic. Partially the reason why, like, Rememberables, I think I might have touched on this last time I talked to you, but I think everything from back in the Jinx to 12 Days to, like, any project that I ever did music with, like, even though I always sang on my projects, I always was so insecure with my voice that I buried it intentionally behind a lot of fuzz, and it just became an aesthetic and sound for it. But most of it was coming from a place of insecurity, and so, like, there is a part of me that, like, I want to play, like, Rememberables music and play with those guys, because I love those guys.
Yeah.
And would love to tour with them as much as possible. But we're just, like, in terms of where we are in our career with that, and in a COVID climate, like, I'm not asking, I don't have that same burning question or desire to do the kind of tours that we were doing pre-COVID. Like, I have to ask myself whether or not, like, I want to, play any punk basements the same way that I used to, or do, like, how many floors do I want to sleep on before my back can't really take it anymore? It definitely is, like, I don't want to sound like an old man, but that's sort of what I am. It's like, I gotta sort of recognize that, like,
interesting,
I just don't have the malleability that I had when I was younger, which was like, you could get away with being a little broke and getting away with being a little hungry, but post COVID, it's just not a sound investment. Any way you look at it, and like, until we could get to a position in our career where, we can make a sound investment, on tours or records or music licensings or anything like that. It just gets harder. It gets a little bit more difficult to want to push yourself in the things that you want to do that also require the livelihood of other people. And really, that's where my selfishness comes in, where it goes, I know, like, I can't ask these guys to keep roughing it, if they have a better opportunity to do things with a better project or a more attainable project, and being able to actually, like, make some money off of it, which, I wish wasn't a case, but that's the reality of where we are. It's like, we're all fighting for a piece of that $1 billion pie, and we're getting crumbs of it, if even that. So,
I have to say this here because I guess in a lot of ways, it's kind of a bittersweet thing for me to say this here because, you know, I completely understand what you're saying. I really, really do. And I understand perception and I wouldn't maybe not motivation, but because I think the motivation is still there, but it's obviously you have to be very careful and very thoughtful about how you want to go by because the way you used to do things before, as you already mentioned before, may not work the same for you now for various reasons. But it's kind of bittersweet for me to hear you say it because it sounds like to me you're in a position where you figured out what's going to work best for you. And, you know, even though you love playing with everybody in the band, and we almost have to take a backseat in that regard. But a part of me is like sad to hear that too, because your last record that you guys had done, I love that record. And you know, having heard the first one that you guys did and then this one, it was just getting better. And I honestly was looking forward to the next great record that you guys were going to be putting together here. So again, it's bittersweet for me to hear you say that because as I said before, I'm happy for you. I really, really am. But it sucks to hear it because we won't get to hear the next Rememberable record that could be even better from what we just last got here, because that record blew my mind. Was when Tim sent me the link for it before it was released. I remember he was like, yeah, here's a record. Let me know what you think. I was blown away. This is fucking incredible. The sound is much better. I mean, the instrument, the composition is just on par. It's amazing. He's like, yeah, man, thanks, we feel like it's amazing. So like it's again, it's bittersweet. And I don't mean to repeat myself, but I'm happy for you, but it sucks at the same time because there's still so much more that I think you guys have left over. That here's what I hope would happen. And I mean this when I say this here. You know, when you guys hopefully get around to it one day where you guys can really take the time to put another record together, I honestly expect that record, after years of like, I wouldn't say suppressing things, but just kind of holding things inside, and then eventually experiences you've had, the knowledge you have gained from the various points of your life where have may more or less influenced you to come up with better ideas about how you want to go about with your direction in music, that will all come together. And because you guys work so well together, that it's all going to be flowing very easily to the point where when it comes out, it's going to come out like that. And then that record is just going to be blowing people's mind that come around to listen to it. And I honestly believe that you guys could do that because having heard that first album and then hearing this one, I feel like there's so much you guys held up inside that was just waiting to come out, and we got that on that record. And I expect that however far down the line is going to be, whether it be years from now, decades from now, whatever the case may be, when the Rememberables get back together, I expect another great record. So, I mean, I'm not trying to set the standard, but I believe that you guys are so good that it's just only keep getting better from there. And I think the experiences you guys had will add on to those, to that, in my opinion. So that's giving you flowers.
I appreciate everything you said. And like, the thing is, I don't like, I say it as if there's not going to be another Rememberables record, but it's not really the case. Like for me, I think in terms of like being a, consistent touring band right now just isn't really feasibly in the cards, like, especially with the way that records are being delayed right now, tours are being delayed because the virus is still going out, it's still putting everybody out. But yeah, like there's a part of me that, is hopeful and wishful. Like I know like there's more material to be made, but like even between the first and the second record, that took years to really sort of conjure up that material. And I think, it's going to take time, but like, honestly, like I really look at like if a third record is going to be made, we're probably going to like start focusing as being more of like a, I would like us to be more of like a studio band, and not saying that like we wouldn't do any touring. It just like more focus on going like, if we free ourselves from the limitations of what we can only do live, and really look at like what we can explore in terms of our sonic sounds and landscapes, and really create like a texturized and like cohesive, like sonically sounding record. I think there's a lot of unlimited possibilities that we could do there that would actually like further grow the band in a way that we never thought ourselves possible, but I think a lot of times, like when you get into a project that's used to doing touring or used to doing things in a sort of routine manner, like you're gonna always sort of see the limitations of that, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And so like in a way, like I hope that like it is bittersweet, where it's like I miss playing the live shows. I miss being able to translate that energy live for a lot of people, but like I also go like I think there is another aspects to performance where it's like creating a sonically sound beautiful record, or album that really gets to really push you in ways that you didn't think was possible, or limit yourselves in the way that are possible. Like I always like to joke that like in a band setting, everyone wants to just play at 10 at all times, but some arrangements you need to just like a post-rock record or something that you just have to slowly build incrementally to let like textures and sonic landscapes come out. And some songs really don't require vocals, or some songs don't require additional drums or guitar or anything else. It's
right.
Sometimes it's about the simple textures that like really like play into it. So I think in that regard, like if we could free ourselves like that, we could probably write our best material.
I was going to say that on this here, because when I hear you talk more and more, from when we first started to where we are with this conversation now, and even now when I think about the previous conversation that we had previously, where I think one of the things that I started to learn more about you is that it kind of perplexed me a little bit here too, because the things that you felt insecure about yourself in this case with the music, I thought that brought the best out of you. So I'm always I'm not saying I'm perplexed as in like I don't get it. I do get what you mean, but I feel like every time you get to the point where you're creating more and more music, let me know if I'm wrong, but the impression that I'm getting, because I listened to that record and I'm thinking this is the best you guys have done so far up to that point, and it's going to keep getting better. Because I feel like as you discover more about yourself and realize that those insecurities, I'm not going to say are not real, but this person that I'm listening to is the real person, if that makes any sense. And I think as you start making more and more music, I think more of that will come out more and more with that sense of confidence you have, to the point where that imposter syndrome you may have felt before about yourself is no longer going to be a factor for you. And I think at that point, when you get to that point of your life where you're able to make that music without that concern, I think even greater stuff is going to come out of it as well. Because like I said before, hearing the first record, which I think is great, and hearing the second record, which I think is even greater, as I said before, I think a lot of it's from me listening to you talk. There's more about yourself you're discovering, and it's a lot less concerns about that imposter syndrome, if that makes any sense. Is that kind of a fair assessment to make?
No, absolutely. I think you nailed it right on the head.
Okay.
I think that's been a lifelong game. And, I think just as like somebody who would do visual arts, and concentrate on a theme for most of their career, most of their life. And you're like, dude, you've made the same circle on this painting, or you made the same ink blot on canvas, like for years and years. For them, like it's an actual, there's something that they're whittling away and sculpting away, right? And learning more about themselves in the process each time. And I think in a lot of ways, like I've had to learn about, what seemed to be so easy to come to me in childhood, like doing Jinx at 12, it was like not even a second glance. Like it was like, just put it on a 4-track, just do whatever,
Right.
Don't think twice about it, just do it.
Right.
I lost sort of that like impulsivity, like, like that spontaneity to like, just like go like, what's the fun in just creating, and then it became expectation either for yourself or for an audience or for
other people that are playing with you, you know? And then I remember that's why Jinx stopped doing things in the first place. We got to a point where we were like, you know, we were getting in over our heads. We had too much expectation for something. We got jaded about it. And at the same time, we didn't know enough about the business to like even make a decision on anything.
Right.
And then it was like really sort of discovering about being playful about the music again, and then what you're actually trying to communicate. And I think at a certain point, I also like I had to look at where I was and was like, what do I fear communicating through my music? What am I really trying to communicate? Who am I really trying to communicate this to? And yeah, like I think, you know, right now I'm in that imposter syndrome stage where it's like I'm in a band with very talented musicians that are doing this day in, day out with no problems, you know, like they're able to switch the modality, you know, and it's like, you know, Chris could go from playing in our band, you know, and playing
metal band
4 times as slow as he does in every other one of his bands, and then be able to like switch that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I know, like for my own imposter syndrome, I don't have the technicality or proficiency to be able to do that. But there's a part of me that goes like, I would love to like shred to some, you know, British metal, you know?
Well, here's the thing though. And this is, I hope you don't mind me interrupting you, because this is the thing that I'm starting to notice here, because in my opinion, you know, we talked about this before, if I recall correctly. You are essentially the driving force, and the reason why I'm pointing this out is because when I hear you talk about, you know, those insecurities you have about yourself, quite frankly, you are the reason why I would say I'm not dismissing Tim, Chris, or Matt. I'm not dismissing it by any means, but you are the reason, in my opinion, why the band sounds so good. I'm pointing you out in the forefront here is because Tim is an incredible guitarist, and I've known him since I was a kid, and I knew that when I first met him in music, I knew he was going to be doing this for the rest of his life. I knew this was his passion. Obviously, I've never met Chris, and I've only talked to Matt for a short period of time in the previous conversation, but I could tell that, you know, from what I understand about Chris, is there's a certain wisdom that he has about himself where he knows how he could adapt when it's necessary. And Matt, I'm more or less kind of seeing that he's, because I don't really know him well, obviously, but a team player that I'll do whatever you need me to do because I love you guys. And that's what I noticed from him. But you, on the other hand, I figured that you have the ideas and you have the balance, but the insecurities are, I think, is really preventing you from really exploring these great ideas you have, like to really expand on stretching out your arsenal, if you will. And you have a bunch of great guys who can help with that and help supplement with what they're able to pull off here. And you being the director, if you will. So because when I hear you talk more and more about this here, I was like, this is just a matter of time before you drop that and then go full blast. Because I think when I noticed when you had played in Jinx at 12, even, I think I said it to you before in the conversation, where I noticed that right away you were the glue to this entire group. That's what I remember the most. And then when Tim started getting more acquainted with you and you guys became friends, I knew right away that was going to be the sticking point, that's going to be the glue to that nucleus of a group that you guys were forming together. And even when I learned after the fact that you guys were still playing music, I was like, of course, I get it. I understood it right away. So, you know, it's interesting for me to hear you say that, but I think honestly, it's just a matter of time before that insecurity is becoming less of a factor and your confidence level is going to go through the roof. But because you have that experience, I think the humbleness that you will get from that you'll never let certain things get to your head, because you have that experience to be able to, I would say, be very thoughtful with very methodical in that way, to be very, very careful about how you will not let the distractions get the best of you, because you've seen what that's like and you understand your limitations and you understand where you excel in, and you're going to be able to balance it out quite well. And I think that will reflect in your music, because it's like I said before, as the years have gone by, you've gotten better, and it shows that in the record. So I'm just expecting that it's going to get better and better from that point. I'm repeating myself, but I really do mean that when I say that here. So again, that's my flowers to you in that respect.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. That means the world to me, because like, I mean, the insecurity is real, but you know, I do think that there is definitely like, do I think Rememberables have written their, you know, definitive record? No, I think there's more to be said and more to be done.
Yeah.
But I think there's got to be a little bit of a growth and perspective on it too, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like maybe part of it is stepping away from doing any of the sort of business motivated side of it to really sort of get back to the organic of like going, well, what does it mean to like actually like get together and conceive a record together or like write something, you know? Like, I'm not, you know, saying that we'll write like a Kid A, but like I would like to be able to know that like there's a weirdo record in there that I'm like, I did not expect that to come. And part of it was mainly because I had held on to expectations so long that it had to sound a certain way or had to sound like something. And by not forcing that, it actually allowed me to have more room for, you know, creative growth or something.
Yeah. I think you got it, man. I really do mean that because, you know, I said it before and I'll say it again. That record breathe was just incredible. And here's the thing too, because you know we talked about it before in the previous conversation, where you know I think I asked you, if I recall correctly, about finding these hidden gems that no one's ever heard of, and you're right there experiencing that moment where like this is gold. And you know I think a lot of people get the perspective that you know if you are that good, you should be able to play at this level of you know of a I don't know of some show that people will gravitate to. And I don't think that's necessarily the case here, because I think, you know, if you're good no matter what. So I think the perception about the fame and glory that comes with that that's not what I'm implying with you guys here, because honestly, I don't really care about that. But I'm not going to lie, I would like to see you guys play at that level for sure, because what I want to see happen, quite frankly, is when everyone hears you play these songs, getting the same emotional reaction that I got of it, I hope would have that same effect on them. So that way, whenever, in this case, like for example, the song Dirt, which I think is one of your greatest songs you've ever written, when I hear you play that song, I'm hoping, you know, in a large capacity in front of this crowd, that when you're hitting those high notes, that everyone's going to help you with it, just in case in the event that you're being the last closing song, it'll fit with that moment because everyone has built up to that. And I'm like, it's kind of like the crescendo of like everyone was waiting for that peak, and that was the peak, and everyone's participating. So I'm kind of like fantasizing that in a weird way, but I honestly do hope that would happen, because there's certain things that you have been able to accomplish that I've taken away from that record, and in the first one too, especially with the song I'm forgetting, The Stranger. The Stranger. Yeah, it was The Stranger. That's the first song you guys heard together. And even then, when I first heard it, I was like, this is a great song. Right away, I knew that this is a fantastic song. And then, of course, Miles, which I think is one of your greatest written songs you've ever done. And, you know, of course, Dirt comes to mind as well, too. But that song, to me, I kind of compare it to like the Deftones White Pony record with the song Pink Maggot. Like that build up to the end of the song or the end of the record, and you have that big payoff. That's what I got off that song with that record. So there's a huge build up to that, and it pays off at the end. And that's what I hope would happen when you get to be able to do that in a live setting, but in a large capacity where people can feel that, because I think you guys are able to accomplish that in that level, if you will. So yeah, again, my flowers to you again.
I and using that analogy, hopefully, you know, this like little hiatus will have its own payoff with a, you know, great record, you know, on the other end. I honestly don't think like it's like gonna be the last Rememberables records. You know, I think it's definitely a growth time. I mean, Matt's out in LA now, and I'm down here, and like I think there will be a time for us to all come back together and stuff like that. But I think there's a record to be made between that time before we start touring again, you know.
Yeah, I hope you do.
And I think, you know, while the world's on pause, you know, we you know, there's an argument that we could have written stuff during COVID, but you know, I think we were all sort of processing our own PTSD there. And you know, it led us into, you know, I did you ever watch Ronin Warriors?
Ronin Warriors? No, I don't think so.
That anime?
No, I did not see that. No.
I'm trying to use another analogy. It's sort of like,
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it.
Disperse into our own journeys before we could come back together, and then figure out what it means to be a team, or tie it back into the Marvel universe. You know, like in between each Avengers mission, we all had to go into our own little solo adventures and stories.
So you're waiting to make your end game
come back
album
together and fight a bigger cause, right?
Yeah. So you're waiting to make your end game album. Is pretty much is what you're implying here.
Yeah. You know, like because you know you had to have the Civil War happen before you get to Endgame and reunite Tony and Steve, right? Right.
That's a great analogy. I actually like that one.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all figuring it out, and this is part of our own little journeys there.
And if you name that record Endgame, I would buy 10 records.
Dude, we should name that record Endgame.
Seriously,
definitely tell Tim that. Just make sure he knows. Tim would be like, "Yeah, I'm into that."
Yeah, hell yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I can see them. I can see him do that. I will be honest with you in saying this here. When you and I were kind of conversing back and forth, kind of sporadically throughout the last time we had spoken here, when you mentioned before about I would love to talk about comics and stuff like that, I was like, great, I'm all for that. But I will be honest and say that there was a part of me that thought, well, I don't want to just talk about that. Not that I had anything against it, because one of the things that I would always try to accomplish whenever I do this show is that I'm interested to getting to know a certain side of you that I may have missed beforehand, if that makes any sense. Learn something more about you. And initially the show was going to be about talking about films as a gateway to talk about other things. That was the initial thought process of the show. And then as time has gone by, because I've been doing this now for I think over a year now, if I recall correctly. Yeah, it's been over a year now. It's crazy. But anyways, I started to realize that there was a deeper purpose that I've made this for myself, where I'm interested in hearing about the journey, the actual, I guess, spectacle, if you will, the product, if you will, in the events that occurred after the fact. So it's interesting for me, as we got towards the end of the conversation, that, I said to you before about how much I love your last record, and then hearing what happens after all that. That part was much more interesting for me, because then what I'm expecting to happen, as I said before, is that once you regroup, I expect the next product to be even better, because I know how well you guys work, and I know how well you, how thoughtful you are with that process. And then I figured there's going to be a final payoff that will satisfy everyone, who, especially with those who are not aware who you guys are, that will listen to like, this is really good, and want to go back to revisit you guys again. But I think that, with where we were discussing about this whole thing, I was kind of, I wouldn't say hesitant, but I was like, I would like to talk about other things too, because there was a part of me that wanted just to steer away from that. But once I started talking more about your perspective on film and your perspective on like what was your top 10 or top 5 or whatever, and hearing your thought process and hearing that and getting that break from you where you're like, I don't know. Then I started to realize that this conversation that I anticipated to have what I was expecting to be a good one, but I got something more out of it here too, where, because I think I'm so accustomed to listening to these type of conversations to be more about like, it's a show, if that makes any sense. I'm not saying it's not a real conversation, but it's a show. Like, so talk about this Marvel and Kevin Feige, like that. Something about that form of conversation on these subject matters here, I don't always gravitate to. I do only if it's something that is interesting for me. And if I listen to it, it's because I want to learn something about the production that maybe these guys know about that I'm not aware of, but I have to get through all the other stuff that I don't really care for. So when we started conversing, it wasn't so much like that at all. In fact, it was the polar opposite, which I appreciated, because when I was asking those questions, you didn't have response for that right away. It was like a breath of fresh air, because I realized that this is not bullshit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So then when it transitions to pop culture talk, if you will, to life, it flowed very, very well into the topic. And then now that we're closing it off here, I think that this is the reason why I love these long form conversations, because I would have never have gotten to that point with you and learning more about you in that respect if if we didn't have the time to put into that here. So, I hope that, because I would love for us to do this again. And anytime you want to do it, all you have to do is let me know. I'll make time for you like that. Because I really enjoy
I'll fucking slide in your DMs and talk about that anytime.
Yeah. So
I'll chime in on any project that you want to discuss, or any topic, and we could free form it all the time. I enjoy talking with you. I think you have really cool insight and perspective on things. And I noticed that last time we had a conversation. That's why I was like, I just want to do this up with you, because I think you have a lot of interest in a lot of things that you have a lot of perspective on, that like I just want to like pick at your brain on it,
Oh, that's nice of you to say.
Yeah, man.
It's really nice of you to say. But it's funny because I come from a position where I have perspective, but I don't have any experience, if that makes any sense. So that's the only thing that I need to have more of, is more experience. So I'll share with you something off record here, but there's a lot more things that I want to do now that has certainly have come for me to actually go for it, because of these conversations that I've had with several people here on the show, that I've had the drive, but I never actually executed on it. And because of these conversations that I've had, I started learning a lot about myself, that I wouldn't say it lit a fire, because it was always been there, but I kind of more or less just lifted the lid, and now it's starting to come out. If that makes any sense. So there's certainly a lot about how I'm starting to realize that, because I was so complacent, I got used to that. This pursuit of passion that I've had and want to do this here open up more passions that I realized I've had, but now I'm actually going to go through with it here, because it's I don't know how the best way to explain it here, but it helped out a lot, if that makes any sense. And for me to be able to have this conversation with you, you'd be very surprised. I'm not sure if you may have noticed it, but this conversation also opened up my eyes on a lot of other things too, that I can take away from, that will help influence in some way, shape, or form the decision making I'm going to make in whatever particular field I'm going to start to pursue here. That is something that I want to actually get done for myself, in hopes to develop more relationships along the way. So that way, I'll be frank, if I'm able in a position where I can pull off like, hey guys, I'm going to do a film. I would love to use guys your music, but I want you guys to play in the film too. Like if I could do something like that, having these relationships with you guys in that respect, and the various other people that I've talked with too, to be a part of that journey, not for the fame and glory, because that's not what I'm doing it for, but to be a part of that journey, because I love what we have and I want to carry that in this capacity here. Would you guys want to join in? And I would hope that your answer would be yes. And I think it will be, but not to waste your time in doing that, because here's a film, guys, but it's going to be a shitty horror film. No. It's going to be a good film. And this is why you guys want you to be a part of it. Here's the story. And then, realize that I'm not wasting your time in the process there. So there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of time and thought that I've given into here about what I want to do. And quite frankly, a lot of it has to do with who I'm talking to that help influence that. So in a lot of ways, you may not realize it, but you have influenced that to some degree here. So, that's my thank you to you in that respect.
Yeah, man. No, I thank you so much, man. The same way these conversations help. I think any of these like conversations that we can have openly with people, especially as we've gotten older, they help remind us of the things that bring us joy, the things that also highlight, the fears that we've embedded in us over the years, the insecurities that we've gained from having to deal with adulthood in a way, and navigating that. But if anything, I hope that these conversations like help remind us of like the fact that we don't lose sight of that, like that the things that still brought us joy from our teenage years is still very much a part of our identity. And, even though life circumstances might change our priorities or circumstances, it shouldn't deter us from the things that make us happy and bring us joy, and for any other reason to do them because they bring us joy, much in the way that you're like, I didn't realize that moving away from Virginia, but then like I get to North Carolina and realize that things that make me feel like home are here, much in the same way that I moved down here with those same fears, and then found a home here and realized that home is, not to be cliche, but home is what you make it, and where your heart is, And I'm glad to be with a very supportive partner. I'm glad to have shelter. I'm glad to have that sense of security, but also like I'm very much feel at home because I'm actually, though I'm not doing music right now, I'm still acting in a creative measure that is very much in tune to who I am. And like, I would say that like, I could argue that like one of my first loves is film, I would say before I even learned to really play guitar, so in doing so, I'm sort of back in touch with a lot of my roots. And, right now for me, the joy in doing this is like being able to say that I had an experience in being able to try to do that, in whatever capacity. So.
All right. Well, so on that note, again, for the cameras, I'm going to say thank you again. And as always, the door is always open for you whenever you want to swing on back. And again, anytime you want to, I'll make the time for you because I love our conversation. And I've really thoroughly enjoyed this 3-hour plus conversation we had here. And I'm sure we could have gone for another 3 more hours as well, too, without a problem. Yeah. So, but again, thank you again for your time, man.
Dude, thanks for having me on here, man. It's great talking with you. Hope you have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk again soon.
Deuces.